And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bash us, him.
Attention to roll call.
That's right. Good morning, everybody. 8:05 live Eastern Time, and of course, 5:05 Pacific Coast. It's dark out here, bright and early. We got a good interview coming for you. Retired Detective Mike Furia from the NYPD. He's going to tell us his story, tell us about his life, his experience with the NYPD. He's got his own podcast, too, called Vendetta Blue, and we'll let Mike tell us about that. So good morning, Mike. Let's get into it. It's a pleasure to have you. Listen, we always ask questions just to warm you up. Let's start. Tell us how you grew up, where you grew up, and why you joined the NYPD.
Absolutely. Good morning, guys. I just want to thank you guys for letting me on here. It's been a long time coming, man. I've been waiting for a long time to get up here. I also want to say hi to all the assholes watching me right now, hating on me on the 12th, 13th, and 14th floor on West Plaza. Cowards, as usual. So, Mike Furia. I'm like John from Bensonhurst. I grew up in the 80s and 90s over there. I was there till high school. I lived on 75th between 19th and 20th. For anybody else that's watching, only child. Father was a Teamster, union delegate. Mother, same thing in the post office, union delegate. So I've seen fighting, and I knew in my career I'd be great at fighting verbally, of course. I grew up, in the streets. I was always in and out, doing my thing. And back then, it's not like today. Playing basketball outside, hanging out in the schoolyard. Tough times. I lived in a tough neighborhood. I always say the toughest things I've ever seen in my life were being a teenager in the street. The stuff that I seen on the job came nothing close. I think that's the problem today. A lot of cops never had any experience, in any aspect of the street life, fighting, whatever it may be. And now they become cops, and it's a whole eye-opener for them. It's a rude awakening. And I worked with a lot of those people, unfortunately. But other than that, I Italian kid, raised, I had to prove myself a lot, obviously. Redhead kid, Italian, 100%. You're out there to prove yourself. And a lot of doubters. And I always silenced my doubters, as my old unit will tell you. I went to Catholic school, Our Lady of Guadalupe. Best friends I ever had in my life. Definitely got to, point them out there. Junior high, started getting into basketball. Never really thought about being a cop. Kind of came on later in my life. I went to school for digital media arts. That's where my technology background comes from, which ultimately led me into real-time crime center and the facial identification section later on. I was a squad guy, and I want to put that out there before certain people start leaving this. When they hear, FIS guy, right away you assume a house mouse. But my last 9 years, you could say I did work inside, but I was always outside, unfortunately. A lot of details, and I was the guy that they would send.
So Mike, before we get into where you are and how you ended up, like, why'd you become a cop? What was that like? What were you thinking? You're a street kid from Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. From what I'm hearing, you probably didn't like the cops. I mean, am I wrong by saying that?
I honestly had no opinion on the cops till 9/11. Of course, I seen the courageous acts, and obviously we lost people, and I was thinking fireman at that time if I had to go into a city job. I have a lot of my friends went into sanitation. Probably should have did the same. I didn't have that aspiration the inspiration to be a cop, but I didn't like school. I went to digital media arts. I hated going to the city every day. I went to school right across the street from Madison Square Garden. Then I got into business, and I went to Kingsborough. And when you kind of go backwards, it's a dead end. And I was like, you know what? Let me take this test. I took the test, and I got called before I was even 21. So I had to defer everything. I had to wait till I was 21. November came, my birthday came, and that January I was in.
Oh, Mike, listen, I know you have some, talk about some people on the job who are cowards or not, but you got some people here that love you already. Steven Nakeo, you know him? He says, Mike Furia, great guy. So you already got people in your corner. There's a lot of people in the comments who already said, and Franco, great friend to the podcast, says, love this guy already. So you got some fans already here, brother. So you said you have a lot in common with John. You said you were a street kid. Did you ever get arrested too before joining the NYPD?
No, I came very close.
So I'm like John. You were able to not get caught. I got caught twice.
I should have been caught. I was caught red-handed quite a few times, but
Tell us about that.
Talk my way out of things, and one real close chance in Caesars Bay. I think John might remember. You used to go to Kmart, and you used to come out with a lot more stuff than you went in with. It was more.
I remember that spot by Toys R Us, right?
Yes, absolutely. And then we used to go ride our bikes off the roof into the water. So you do crazy things as a kid. I mean, it wasn't any poverty or anything. You just did it. It was a dumb thing. It was a life lesson, and later on you learn not to do these things.
Patrick Donahue, great friend of the podcast. You actually probably saw him on here. He was a detective also. Says Mike was faster. Mike was faster than John. No arrest history.
Yeah, no, I mean, Steve Nacal, he's put. I can't wait to read these comments. These are guys I did anti-crime with. Pat Donahue, I also had the pleasure of meeting him when I was there. He used to come and see my delegate, was Tom Donahue, but he was the better Donahue. I'll tell you that much.
I like that.
Don't talk about the Irish; they stick together.
It's all right. I can't get any more enemies than I already got.
Cheers for beers.
So what was it like? What was it like going in the academy? What'd you think when you got in the academy? What was your first assignment out of the academy?
So the academy, when I got there, 21 years old, man, it was a joke to me. I couldn't believe that I'm here with the people that we're going to call New York's finest, and they can't even be quiet in the hallway. I'm sitting there waiting to go to the gym. I'm seeing run dropouts, who most of these run dropouts ended up being, very important people on this job. So I was never impressed from day one. And from there, I go to the 7-8 precinct. I met a lot of great people in the academy. I got to say that. My neighbor, I used to take the bus with him, John Vitale, was my first friend in blue. He's a lieutenant today. I never forget the good people in my career, because that's the only positive memory I had was the people I did meet. So I want to just shout him out. But I go to the 7-8 precinct, and in the academy, they told me when you get to the 7-8, it's a very old school precinct. There's going to be a lot of people there that take you under their wing. And there was. I had the pleasure of working with the delegate a lot, Matty Gallagher, great guy. And Park Slope, I didn't know what the 7-8 was. I wanted to go to the 6-2. I wanted to be in Bensonhurst. But I end up in the 7-8, and I had to learn all these name streets, and I never left Bensonhurst. Till this day, I really don't know a lot except where I live now in Staten Island and Bensonhurst. That's all I know. So now I'm out here, and I'm learning the streets. I'm working with some great people, but right from the beginning, I got a lot of pushback because I was young. I was 21 years old, and I started doing plainclothes when I was 22. So it was just the opportunity was there. The timetable fell right, and I got hit with a lot of the.
Wait a minute, Mike. So you had a year on the job, and you got into plainclothes?
A year and a half, about when I went into plainclothes. Yeah.
How did that happen?
Nobody wanted to do anti-crime. I worked with a bunch of people. Like I says, you're a rookie, blah blah blah, but you don't want the spot, but you want to hate on me because I want to do it, and that was my whole team. So I was lucky. I really never was on a foot post. A few times, I was in a car right away, and I went out there and I learned quick. I worked with the active guys a lot of times. I learned from the delegate, but when it came to like enforcement and stuff, I stayed with the younger guys and I made my arrest. And I worked with some notable guys, guys that went far on this job. So
what were you thinking? Like, what'd you want to do in your career? Like, you're doing anti-crime young. So, I mean, obviously, you're probably eyeing going to the squad. What was your thought? Did you want to be a boss? Did you want to go to the squad? How long did it take you of doing plainclothes anti-crime before you actually even got an opportunity to go to the squad?
Great question, John. And this is where I became sour on this job because of this. I personally didn't want to do anything. I was content. I would have stayed in Sector Frank on Prospect Park West for the rest of my career. I loved it. I get into plainclothes. I loved that too. I loved the free. I hated the wearing uniform. I loved wearing plain clothes. I loved sneaking up on these burglars in the action. That was the 7-8 bread and butter. I'm working with Talata Wad, Mike Espito, great guys. I was content. I would have stayed there forever. They had bigger dreams, my partners. Talata Wad is well known on this job, second grader. Everyone loves him. I was the opposite. I raised my career. I worked hard so that he could move up, and I did the same for my other partners. When they left, it was time for me to go, and I had put in for the squad. I was trying to leave. I was trying to go other places. I was young. I wanted to go to warrants. I wanted to go to financial crime, special victims, narcotics. I was actually assigned to narcotics for a minute prior to them offering us anti-crime. I ended up taking the anti-crime spot, so they kind of blackballed me from narcotics after that. But again, it was a learning experience, and just a lot of pushback. Every time I would put in for the detective bureau, I was never getting it. I had no phone calls my entire career until the very end. So time and time again, I put in for the squad, and they kept coming up with reasons to take somebody with usually less time or a better phone call. So it was very terrible time in my life. We were working for a lieutenant, definitely part of the quota scandal, 1015-2. Those numbers ring in my head all the time. I mean, this guy, we worked our ass off for him. When he left, his name's Pat Diskin. He's still on the job. Fuck him. So what happens is he leaves.
Tell us what you really feel.
Not even a goodbye, John. We're literally fucking working our ass off for this guy. He's not even a goodbye when he leaves. I worked for the biggest assholes. And it really went bad. You might have heard this story. There's a sergeant out there. Well, now he's a lieutenant. His name's Canizaro, right? He kind of is my first negative experience on this job. And why? Because he's a 5-year wonder. He's a bully. He thinks he's going to bully me. Not going to happen. One of those guys. I was already in anti-crime. Now he's the new boss. He comes in, and he's kind of like this guy. He has to show everybody up. You didn't leave enough room for me to sign the narcotics envelope. You're not really impressing me. I said, who the fuck are you that I got to impress you? Are you my father? So from that day on, me and this guy were never going to have a good relationship. He ends up getting me in trouble. He forces me to do overtime with him, and he hits a bicyclist. Brings the guy and his bike back in the car. We go back to the car, and he gives away a department bicycle from the basement of the 7-8 precinct. So now, I didn't think nothing of it. This is his decision. I can't stand this guy. 91. That's it. I go home, I do my overtime, and that's it. Long story short, the guy comes back to the precinct. He wants his original bike back. They call IAB. Long short of it is I get failure to report police corruption for a guy that I would have loved to rat him out, but I'm not a rat. But at the end of the day, what did I do? He gave away a bicycle, and that stayed with me for a lot of my interviews.
Is he still on the job?
Yeah, he's still on the job.
He must be reporting that to IAB right now about failing to report corruption. There's a lot of that going on right now.
Yeah, absolutely. He's probably trying to jam somebody up or fake getting hurt or something.
Mike, you got some love going on here. I mean, in the comments here, Mike Smith, he's a brother of mine, man. He loves you. Mike Freed, you got a lot of people here say Mike's the real deal.
I got to say, outside of real time and in the detective bureau in general, a lot of people love me. The chief that I was dealing with at the very end, top of the detectives, loved me. Everybody loved me. It was just my unit. It was real time. The respect is there. Major case guys, I'll say that certain people's name because I'm cool with them. Joe Metsopoulos, he'll tell you, I helped these guys go. I was with them in their careers. They went from 3rd to 1st grade. I was the guy that a lot of people came to as the second opinion. If somebody got you a no match, they came to me. They'll email me privately because they know I'm going to take the time. I'm going to work 24 hours a day until I get something better. And if I don't get a match for you, I'm going to find social media. Until this day, I'm in a chat with 350 great cops. Until this day, I'm still helping people that are active find people, even though I have different access now. But, it's something I love. I love doing my job.
So Mike, how long were you in the squad for? Like so I don't think you ever answered that question. How long were you in anti-crime before you went to the squad? And,
Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah.
Again, I'm writing a book, so all this stuff is in my head. Like, I'll ramble on, but I was in anti-crime for a long time, from 2007 till officially 2007 to 2013. Used to go on those borough crime meetings, and the late great Chucky Scholl used to be like, "What the fuck are you still doing in anti-crime? Why are you not in the
easy
squad?"
with the curses, bro. You could curse, but
You have totally
You gotta
outdone
pull
John.
down.
John used to have the highest number of F-bombs, but I think you outdid John.
Oh, yeah.
Easy.
Long time coming. So,
Yeah.
what happens is, Chucky Scholl's he's telling me, keep going, kid. Eventually you'll get in the squad, blah, blah, blah. So that from 07 to 2013, right? Now in 2013, I go right upstairs to the 7-8 squad. My old partner, he's in Staten Island. He's in the 122 squad. So now I'm with guys that I used to see in the building, and I didn't really even deal with them because I used to send my partners in. I didn't want to deal with the squad. The squad used to look at me the same way everybody else did. Oh, this kid's only 21 years old, blah, 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 23 at that time. So now I knew them. I knew some of them from patrol. I got along with a few of them. Andrew Suarez, great guy. He was in a shooting himself. I worked, nothing but good things about the squad. But I was in the squad from 2013 to 2016. In 2016, that's when I went into the real time. Squad was great. I feel like it was an easy transition for me. I was doing a lot of that stuff in anti-crime. The box is something that to current detectives, they have no idea what they're doing in the box anymore, because now it's video interrogation. Tactics have changed, techniques have changed, and I learned from old timers: Al Morgado, John Callahan, Tommy Marquardt, great guys that had over 20 years on the job. So the things that I learned, you're not going to see today, and a lot of that stuff I took with me to real time, and that's why I was way more successful than most of my coworkers, because I had that squad experience.
So tell us about the experience being in the box. I was always intrigued by interrogations. I worked in PSA 7 the majority of my career as a special operations lieutenant, and watching the squad guys in the if you commute your mic, that helps.
I got it.
Nice. I watched some of the squad guys in the 4.0 and the 4.2. I mean, they were constantly interrogating guys. I mean, we're getting a lot of shootings over there. They were phenomenal. So I was always intrigued by it. I love to watch them. So where'd you learn those skills besides the old guys? Did you get any formal training? Did they send you? Because training in the NYPD, I always say, is like the secret squirrel society. They make a big deal about training. You have to have a hook or actually really need that. But I think it's ridiculous. I think they should train everybody. So did you get any actual formal training for that in the box? Was there anybody that was a mentor to you?
Ralph Salento, he used to do the video interrogation, the custodial interrogation course. Definitely learned a lot there. They brought people in. It was great. One of the best trainings that I ever got on this job. Most of them are terrible, but that was actually a good one. But actually, what it really was is the 7-8 is not the highest crime area. I can't even compare to somebody in the 4.6 or the 7.5. And I will never brag about the things that I did in the squad, because I know there were definitely way better squad detectives than me. I seen it. The only thing I'll say I'm the best at is anything in real time. But in the squad, these guys are phenomenal investigators. What I did learn from in the box was from two guys, Tony Shy and Rule Sterome, right? These guys were undercovers in narcotics. So they knew how to relate to these criminals. Now they're investigators in the squad. So now they're in the box, and I'm seeing some of the stuff that they do. These guys actually were great in the box. So I learned a little bit from everybody, but when it came to the box, that's where I learned most of my stuff from. A lot of people used to shy away from the box, especially there are a lot of timid cops and, not comfortable with speaking. Me personally, I hated public speaking until a few years ago when I started doing presentations for facial and stuff like that. But now I love it. I love reaching out to people. I feel like, you hit them in the right spot, and, you really affect people's lives. So in the box, I used to relate to these criminals. I was young. Most of the criminals that we were locking up were young. And I would get a lot of confessions and positive debriefings, so I enjoyed that part of the squad. Absolutely.
How long did you spend in a squad before you, and like what was that like when you wanted to go to real time, or did you want to go to real time? How real time? How did that happen where you got into facial recognition?
So now all these old timers that taught me, they are retiring. They were like, I'm done. This is 2015. They were done. And I'm working with some new guys, kind of not bad detectives, but they weren't team players. The camaraderie in the squad changed around that time. And it's still getting worse and worse and worse. But in the 7-8 at that time, it was time for me to go. I was working for a lieutenant, John Brennan. He's actually very popular in the news right now. He used to drive a token paleface. What is it? Token whatever his name is there.
You token
Right.
paleface.
He made a lot of money. He made a lot of money.
He made a lot of money. A lot of money. He didn't help me out, that's for sure. So, but I know quite a few people he did help out. That
he's watching as we speak right now.
Yeah. So, now at this point, he's a patrol lieutenant, nice guy. I really don't want to talk bad about him. But he didn't know squad stuff, and he's bothering me about an assault 3 case that Chief Boyce supposedly called about, which wasn't the case. It's just that's how it is. They make big deals out of everything, and this was something that happened in Prospect Park that I did all the work for, and I had just come back from trial, and I'm like, I can't take this shit anymore. So there's that. There was the precinct CO, Frank DiGiacomo. He's still active too. He's I don't even know where he is right now, but he was another guy.
Frank got bit by council member Suzanne Swang. I think she covers like parts of Bensonhurst 6'2". So Frank's a chief now, and they just dropped a case against Susan Swang for biting him, breaking his skin, and he said he's completely okay with it. It's all good. You could assault cops, you could chomp cops, take a chunk out of their arm, and it's all good. Frank's good with it. So he's going to get promoted real soon. Congratulations, Frank.
She took a bite out of crime.
Yeah, don't worry. I almost took a bite out of him. So he's over there accusing me of shit canning a GLA. Which was in the squad. It's a B9. We're not investigating GLAs, so why are you breaking my balls, right? So he waits for this opportunity in Atlantic City at Harrow's pool party with 7-8 precinct trip that I was there, and he's bringing this up to me, and he wants to shake my hand. I says, oh, listen, man, you don't shake my hand at work. Don't shake my hand here. And he says, oh, that's a dick move. And I say, just like this, John, Eric, take off the watch. Let's go. Whoa. There's people there. I'll tell you, Rue Martins, he's a sergeant on the job right now. He'll tell you because he was right next to me. And there was always somebody right next to me when I had problems with a lot of people on this job. So between that guy, my lieutenant, it was time for me to go. I went on Post or whatever it was at the time. I think I was actually on ECMS, a little pop-up menu to apply for real time. I says, oh, you know what? I'm the guy that they call for videos to download all this stuff. And I'll probably be good for that with my background. I put in for the interview. I go, I sit down with this guy, Kevin Keenan. I nailed the interview. He recognized my name as one of the original FIS applicants. All right, I'm probably going to get this. I didn't think nothing of it. 6 months passed. I'm like, you know what? This is never going to happen. This is another nepotism spot. And on January 27th, 2016, I go to work. I'm about to assign the cases in the morning, and I see my command code change. And now I had never left the 7-8 my whole career. This was 11 years. I didn't even know I was transferred. So that was my last day there. And I parked in the CO's parking spot, Frank DiGiacomo, and I packed my locker, and I was on my way. Never looked back.
So what was your initial impression then? So you get to the next unit. I mean, you're all excited about it. What was your initial impression?
At real time, I hated it. I couldn't stand it. They put me on midnights. I thought my time, 11 years on the job, I thought those rookie days were over. I didn't think I was going to be doing midnights. But it turns out midnights was the greatest tour because that's where all the squad guys were. Not that there were many, but the 4 of them were there. So I was able to relate with those guys, sitting around answering the phone, a lot of shootings, trying to help detectives get video and, little things that they have to do during shootings, just CompStat stuff.
Let me kind of get specific.
Mhm.
Were the detectives or cops at real time? Were they guys that worked their way, they grinded, they deserved it, or were these guys that had hooks? Was this a phone call unit? I mean, what was real time crime like as far as the apparatus, the people that worked there?
It was absolutely a phone call unit, 100%. But at that time, the guys that I was working with were Midnights, Waldo Cuba, Jose Taola. These guys were squad guys. Every other tour, especially day tours, these guys were straight from patrol, basically. There were some old real timers there that were there from the unit's inception. Back when real time was at one time in the good graces of the NYPD. Kelly, that was Kelly's baby, Ray Kelly. So once they went to the detective bureau, it became the dumping ground, and they're still getting treated horrible. I mean, there's nothing left in real time. So, but a lot of the guys, there was an unofficial path, and this is what killed me in real time. You would come from patrol. Usually you knew one of the bosses, and they'd bring you to the juvenile crime section. And now anybody knows when you make an arrest for a juvenile, that's who you call. So now you're calling down these guys who have no experience, usually maybe 20 collars or so. And now they're telling you how to process an arrest. And they're usually rude. I'm sure a lot of people that were watching will agree with me. And now, these guys get there. They're usually the guys kissing ass because now they want to get to the other side of real time, do their 18 months, and call themselves detectives. And now this was 83% of the people that I ended up working with in my career. So now from there, I'm doing Midnights in real time. And I'm like, you know what? I think I'm going to go back to the squad. April 16th of 2016, a position opens up for the facial identification section. And I email this guy who originally interviewed me, Kevin Keenan. Now I'm showing interest that I would like to do that because I'm ready to jump ship. I even went on interviews to go work in other units within one police plaza. Somehow he loses the email. I don't know how you lose an email in the NYPD, but he lost it. And I never got interviewed. They interviewed people outside the job. They ended up taking three other people from outside for that position. And we get a new CO, Joseph Cortizes, great guy. He actually took the time to look through people's work, their qualifications, and he knew, like, if you had a digital media arts background or something with computers, he wanted you in facial because facial was like the squad in the precinct, So now when he finds out that I never even got interviewed, he personally interviewed me. And I didn't know this guy from a hole in the wall. This is the first executive that ever did right by me. He goes and he interviews me. The sergeant, Eddie Coelho, is doing everything in his power to not take me. Why? We had no history, but because I have a reputation as a boss fighter. I guess he felt that I wasn't gonna fall in line like the rest of his little puppets. So he kind of wanted to avoid that, start telling me like, if you come to facial, it's a lot of work. And I wanted to tell him, guy, I'm from the squad. Like, look who you got in your unit and you're telling me about work. So I end up getting it. That's how I moved from real time to facial. And that was in 2017.
So what were you doing in facial? Could you describe that to the people who aren't cops? Like, what was your day to day in facial? Like, what were you guys doing? What were you dealing with there? What kind of cases? How were you assisting in the cases? How was it?
Oh, all right. So in facial identification, our primary goal is to identify unknown subjects. They could be missings. They could be guys that we're looking for active cases, arrests. We're looking to arrest them, basically. And what happens is anybody that you get on camera and they produce a wanted flyer with, today that photo has to come through facial identification. If you don't do it, you're going to be scrutinized. Even if you could barely see the face, you have to see some of the nonsense they send facial. It's disgusting. Some of these bosses should be thrown out for allowing their guys to send such stupid stuff to facial.
They're following the procedure.
They are following the procedure 100%. I get it. But there comes a time when you have to say, listen, I don't care what chief you are. You're asking me to send a guy like this is all you see, a nose. We had a foot sent to us once. An NYPD detective sent us a foot. You know?
Actually, Mike Smith highlighted here.
It might be online, dude. It might be. Maybe the guy's got an OnlyFans.
Mike Smith highlighted here. It said his bosses made him bring stupid pictures to you. He said it actually a while ago while we were talking. So you're spot on.
Absolutely. And, you know, but sometimes it was the detective too. Like we had people fax us stuff. Like who's using a fax machine to send a photo for FIS? You know, but Mike Smith, juvie desk equals perps. Yeah, you could thank Brian Hennessy for that. He brought in a lot of people that, you know, shouldn't have been there. He was a nice guy. And I don't want to talk bad about him, but nepotism wins again. So what happens is in facial now, your primary goal, you know, you're identifying these guys. You're taking a photo and you're putting it in facial recognition software, and you're looking through a bunch of people that it could be, right? So that it was a very time-consuming process, especially in its early stages. Technology was not what it was today. They had 5 detectives up there when the unit started. It's up to like 13 right now. There's so many people that aren't officially assigned there, so I don't know how they're articulating that. But, you know, it's one of those things where if you were good at computers, you were going to have higher success during that time. And I came up there right away. My first day, I had a match. The boss was telling me it wasn't the guy. And 4 hours later, he was wrong because the guy was arrested, you know? So it was one of those things like.
And can you just, Mike, just for the audience, what are you running that wanted flyer or that photo through? Like what is it matching? Is it just arrest photos? Like what is that? What do those softwares look like? What does that look like?
Right. So there's no DMV photos. That's the misconception. Everyone for all these years, we tell chiefs, we tell all these people, and they still think that there's DMV photos, but it never happened. There was never ever DMV photos.
What about the foot? There's no DMV photo of the foot.
Maybe the foot, right? So
did you ever figure out what it was?
It is just active mugshots. That's all we have. If it's a sealed mugshot, it's not going to pop for us. Sometimes they are in there, and we have to act like it never happened, and that's a whole nother issue. I wrote a whole 49 about that, about DAT photos and all this stuff. And my buddy Mike, he took all the credit for it, and you know, that's why he's a lieutenant, right? So, long story short, we'll take these photos for any crime. It's even petty larcenies. You know, we do it for everything. It's got to go through facial. It's just like in the squad. Anything with a camera, well, wear everything with a face. And you know, at the most challenging part of my career was during COVID. Everybody's wearing a mask. So me and another great detective that I worked with, she had no squad experience, but she had Photoshop experience, and she went to FIT. She was well versed in computers. Her and I kind of came up with this system on how to remove somebody's lower portion of their face and replace it with somebody else's. So I had a case of a male black. I used the bottom half of Cuba Gooding Jr.'s face, put it on there, and I was able to find the guy.
Wow!
I did this 53 times out of hundreds. You know, my percentage is terrible, but this was not something that was easy. So I put my whole entire efforts went into this. I can't tell you how many hours I invested to perfect this system. I was getting really good at it at the very end, and we were getting no credit for it. It was a shame. It's not something they teach. There is no real formal training in facial. It's kind of like a trial and error thing. You know, we do go through like an FBI class, but it's something that they teach in like, you know, the DMV guys to look at licenses and stuff. It's not, it's not a certification or anything.
Mike, that's a great point. So we have a lot of active and retired NYPD that are friends and listeners to this podcast. But we also have, a lot of law enforcement throughout the entire country. We even have cops overseas that watch this show. And we also have a lot of just police enthusiasts, people that have never had any police experience. So could you walk us through, how does this unit, like, what's the pivot role? How does, like, what is that procedure that, because stupid pictures come to you, right? There's procedure in place, protocol. What is that protocol? How do you work with the squad? How do you work with the precincts? When does someone come to you with a case? If you can walk us through that so people can understand.
So in the squad, you go and say you're investigating a robbery. First thing you want to do is get the video footage. You get the perpetrator's face. Now you're going to take that image or the video, and you're going to submit it through ECMS, which is our case management system. Now in ECMS, it's called an FIS request. You'll submit that, and it will go into our FIS queue. The FIS queue is, it's a never-ending thing. Could be up to 600 cases, 0 when I'm working there, but it's a whole nother story. So we will take that photo and we'll investigate into it. If you're an outside agency, they'll email it to you. They have a dedicated email address. There are a lot of fans out there. There's a lot of people that you think that we're all first graders. It's amazing because we are so successful. But a lot of these outside units and agencies, I'm still very good friends with a lot of them because they've reached out to me. And then even we reach out to other people too. We reached out to Homeland Security. We reach out to other people. So it's like a big community. There's a larger community called FISWIG, which I was always a member of, where we share ideas and how to better our results. So that's the process. Ultimately, it's a very simple process, but the investigative part and looking through the photos is the challenging part.
So Mike, you went through, like the rest of us, you go through a pretty volatile time in the NYPD and in law enforcement. Like, when had politics ever affected your career? Did you notice a change in the NYPD at any point in your career prior to you getting into real time? Are you like, where the hell is this city headed? Like, what do you think about the politics in New York City and how it affected the police department? Did it ever touch you, or didn't it?
After the Eric Garner incident, it was over. The NYPD was done, in my opinion. We were just going to lay back down to all the politicians, and we lost the city. I've seen a lot of great detectives retire after Brian Moore, especially Long Island guys, that knew him and lived near him. The risk became not worth it anymore. That's why people are leaving at 20. Why stay? You did your transit overtime. You boosted up your pension. Why are you staying past 20 right now when it's just, there's no appreciation? And, politics in that time, Eric Adams came in. Before that, de Blasio, right? Terrible. De Blasio, I worked in his command, 7-8. I used to drive down his block. They had a scooter in front of his house at all times. The guy could give two shits about us, but we had a scooter in front of his house, and he wasn't even there. Eric Adams, when he became, when he got in, I had some hope for me because he had given me an award when I was into the squad, part of the Brooklyn Finest Detectives. I got pictures up there with him, and John Brennan, of course, had to be there. So, I had a lot of hopes. I thought maybe with him being mayor, and him being a former cop, I thought that not only I, but other detectives and other cops and, would get a little bit more recognition instead of this corruption that we see every day. So politics, yeah, it definitely affected my life, especially when it came to the Chiefs. I can't tell you how many people, some of these chiefs, Chief Madry, kind of took the chess pieces and made it an unfair playing game for detectives. So, in many ways, politics affected me.
Tell us about Chief Monahan. So now you just mentioned the Chiefs. We know that you have a funny name for Chief Monahan, but tell us, how that came about. What are your thoughts about Chief Monahan, the other chiefs, what were they doing that the leadership changed for you, and how did it impact you in your career, and how did you feel it?
Kneeling on a bridge, I'm on my knees, John. I'm on my knees. I was doing it every day at work. The rats that don't like me today, they all love me when I was doing the Monahan impressions, but that actually just started as a way to reach out to John while I was still active. And I wanted to get my story out there because I knew the writing on the wall was the way I seen it, was that's how it played out. And I was right. And I wanted to at least document it somewhere because I seen myself on this show one day. That was my motivation to keep going. And Monahan, he described the NYPD for me in one shot, just on his knees. And that's how I felt. I felt like the whole NYPD is on its knees now. We bow down to everybody. We don't get the respect that we deserve. I don't care what practices they change in the NYPD with transit. We're never taking the city back. I really don't see it happening. Not under this administration. We have to be cops again. So, in Monahan, that was not the way. And there's a lot of people like Monahan. Who's the other guy? Everyone loves him. Chief Corey came out with this thing. Tell us your story. So me, I'm a writer. I told him my story. I sent him a long ass email, and I even put some of the best part about this is in this email. I'm going to share this one day. I even put a lot of the cases that some of the detectives that I work with that can't stand me, I put their cases in. I put everybody's. I wanted us to get the credit that we deserved. Facial identification, as much as I can't stand a lot of the people that I work with, and I have my reasons, but even with juvenile crime detectives, we did great work. It's a phenomenal unit. We solve case after case. And when I don't mean solve, I mean we assist, but at the same time, we're solving that case. An investigation that would be 3 months could be done in a couple of minutes. Sometimes, depending on the photo, a couple of days, couple of weeks, whatever it may be. But the bottom line is the unit wasn't getting any recognition. Chief Corey came up with this tell us your story thing, and he did what every other executive does. It was all smoke and mirrors. So it was a waste of time. He wasted my time. He wasted everybody's time.
So Mike, tell us about that. Like what's the recognition? I'm taking it as you're saying that nobody was getting promoted out of that unit. Detectives weren't getting great out of that unit. Is that what you're talking about?
If you wanted to get promoted, you had to leave the unit. You had to piggyback a chief, and go somewhere else. And we had people that did that. We finally got a promotion in 2023, but that was strictly Chief Madry. It's a whole nother story. But before I get into that, facial recognition, we had executives constantly telling us, we're putting your names in, we're telling you to the higher ups, we're going to, you guys deserve to get promoted. I have emails. I've put them in my videos. If you pause and read them, you'll see like people were constantly selling us the dream, constantly, putting that carrot in front of us. You got detectives in there, they all are dying to get promoted. Me personally, I just wanted credit for the stuff I did during COVID. I never even wanted to be a detective. Like I says, I spoke to, I did this for my partners, but I wanted recognition for the things that the other people in the office couldn't do. If I'm doing something unique, why not give me a credit? We had Chief Baldessano come in the office one day and they asked about mask cases. So I was like, wow, finally somebody's actually, caring about this. My boss says, we manage. And I'm like, whether you like me or not, you could have at least said, you know what, we have this guy in the corner. He's doing phenomenal things. But he didn't. The next day, came in, suit and tie, went right to Chief Baldessano's office, showed him some of my stuff. I showed him my mask cases. Not because I thought that I was going to get anything out of it, but I had to let the sergeant know, you don't do that. When somebody has a skill, you have to, whether you like them or not, you have to acknowledge it. And if any other, young sergeants are out there, you have to give credit to your guys. It's their only motivation to keep going. And at that point, I had no motivation. Now, you're praising, you're giving false praise to modern, to basic things, basic techniques that anybody could do. And I had a skill that nobody else was doing and couldn't get recognition,
Mike, I got two questions for you because I'm really intrigued by this. I think this is really intelligent police work. I think it's impressive too. So at the height of COVID, obviously wearing masks, that's a major hurdle, obstacle. And you and your partner were able to be so innovative and come up with this. But before you guys were innovative and came up with this idea, was there any protocol in place? Was this discussed that, hey, this is going to be a hurdle, that people are now wearing masks to actually identify their faces? And also with this, as the migrant crisis started with illegal military age males, how did you identify some of these illegal military age males with facial recognition? I figured that would be another obstacle.
Absolutely. There was no protocol. They didn't care about the masked people, the people I worked for. Nobody was really paying attention to that kind of stuff. The squads would submit it, and my coworkers would reject it. It wouldn't, at that time, and up until July of 2022, the software in place would not give you results. So now you have a photo that you're not getting anything with. It's dead. The case is dead. C4, right? But now I'm taking the time and hours of my day to put a face on it and actually get results. Whether I got the guy or not, at least I had a 243 shot chance of finding the guy. So I'm already doing more than the average person. And I spent hours and days of my life doing this. But they didn't care because the way they looked at it as cases are going to keep coming in, we'll reject those ones. Nobody was watching. CompStat was watching. CompStat used to reach out to me a lot. I did 6 weeks there. Chief Furia Pollock had me go work there, and I was supposed to do facial recognition for her, but I had a lot of pushback with that from the Detective Bureau. So what happens is, it was ultimately, just a rejected case. It was dead in the water. The other part of your question was with the migrants. When those cases come in, a lot of them don't have mugshots, and if they do, sometimes it's just too new to be in the database. It's not being put in right away. A lot of times, there was a case that I had, actually the case with one of the first early migrant cases where they shoot at the police in Manhattan, right? That case, I don't remember the particulars, but I got the image, and the social media team, actually, Detective Lana Blanco, I want to give her credit. She actually found a lot of stuff for that guy. And I went one step further, and I sent the facial image into Homeland Security, and we got his picture as he's crossing, border crossing, right? So she did a hell of a job getting the particulars with social media, but now I actually got a face to him, and we have a legitimate ID to say that is 100% the guy. We'll never say 100, we'll say 99.9, but we had the right documents in this case. And that was a success story. Now, it went negative because the bosses that we have try to take credit for everything that we do. And in that particular case, my lieutenant sends out a mass email to Chief Savino, everybody, great job. Look at what we did in facial. I'm so great. And he didn't like that. And, he felt like he was stealing the credit. And now we're discrediting the great work by Detective Lana Blanco, right? So I agree with him. There should have been no email. It should have just been, that's it. We solved the case. But they're always out to look out for themselves. Of course, I got no recognition for any of it, and I didn't expect any at that point in my career. But that's how we combated all the COVID cases, and the answer is we didn't. And during COVID, I worked from home for 2 months. I had the accommodation. At the time I was taking a biologic medication, so I was a high risk or whatever they want to say about it. But I was working from home. And as I was working from home, I'm solving cases. They're telling me, stop working. I'm working too hard. But, it was a tough time for me. I was, worried about certain things. And work was actually what was, keeping me going. I felt comfortable doing what I love the best, which is facial identification. And I kept working, and they were sending me emails. Oh, you're doing too much work. Why are you working so hard? And I'm probably the only guy that ever got told to stop working from home for free in the history of the NYPD, because I would do it for free. You know, negative experience.
So Mike, what were you thinking? Like, I mean, I think that listen, there's always been nepotism in the NYPD. There'll always be some form of nepotism in the NYPD. In my opinion, and I think in the opinion of a lot of people today, it's just so much worse under the Eric Adams administration. We've never seen it before. The transfers, the people promoted to investigative assignments to detective, they're not even making the 18 months. And then, the grade, the second grade, the first grade for people are not doing work. They're just attached to a chief, or they're well liked. What do you think about promotions under the Adams administration? Had it changed? Had you seen a change in these last 3 years? What was that like?
Disgusting. Yeah, I mean, it was always nepotism, like you said. Under Adams, I think we seen there was a certain flavor that you couldn't overcome, and I think that has a lot to do with skin tone. Unfortunately, I hate to say it, but I was told by my delegate that we weren't the right color. And if you look at some of the orders for a certain period of time, you'd have to agree. It didn't help that I'm married to a Dominican woman, but it's even now. It was always bad, but under Adams, it's just 10 times worse. And I could deal with nepotism, and a lot of people will say it's in every job, but it's just right now it's just so obvious. That's what makes it really bad and unbearable. It's just too obvious, and the people that are benefiting from it, they're not humble. When I got to the better part of my career and higher up there, my old delegate Tommy Marquardt used to always tell me, like, Mike, just keep your head down and be humble. Don't draw attention to yourself. But these people, they're proud of it. They're proud. The Gil Ortizes out there, they're proud that they are who they are. They're proud that they could move their wife around 4 different times this year. She could go from unit to unit. Nobody cares. It's amazing. When they don't like you, they'll get you. But when you're liked, man, I don't know. I don't even know what to say. But the nepotism is it's terrible. They're proud of it, and that's what really burns me up the most. I had people telling me, if you came on this job and you're here for 20 years and you don't know anybody, that's your fault. Why do I have to know somebody? Let them know my work. My work's speaking for himself. I'm doing things that nobody else I work with can do. Why do I have to know somebody? And, it's shame on that person, because if you think I'm the person to blame because I don't know anybody, no, you need to take a look in the mirror. Like, you're the problem. You're taking it away from somebody that deserves it. You want to run based on your dreams, based on money and finances and stuff like that. You're doing a discredit. The police department isn't about money. It's about doing the right thing. So.
No, I agree. I agree with what John's saying here, right? There's always going to be some form of nepotism, but it has to be a low percentage that's tolerable. I think in every organization, even in the military, there's a form of nepotism. But the nepotism we see now, it's just so egregious. But what I see with the nepotism, that it actually equates to corruption. The promotions that we see by rocket fuel and people that don't have credible backgrounds, it's and the relationships that we see that could lead to private contracts and things like that. There's no doubt about that. What we see is just so egregious that there is corruption involved. But while this is going on, you also have a mass exodus and a staffing crisis. So what did you see? Did you see this mass exodus? Did you feel this mass exodus? How did it impact you in your unit? You're in a specialized unit. How did that mass exodus affect you? Did your caseload increase? Did you get moved around did you do any transit overtime, or were you utilized in other aspects and taken away from FIS? If you could tell us about that, I appreciate it.
You know, the cases don't stop. They're only going to increase as time goes on because, like I said, it's a protocol and they got to send everything. So the cases never stop. But now people are leaving and they're taking. We only have 13 people in the office for the entire city. So they're taking us. They're putting us right now. They're probably going to 2-3 details a week. It's ridiculous, and the way that the job and the unit in general is handling those details is so poor. It could be done so much easier. As a man of technology, it's a very simple problem to fix. I was doing transit. I was volunteering for transit because when that became available, it was pretty much the end of my career. And like I said, I was 20 and out from day one. But the mass exodus, as people were retiring, it was just only making more work for everybody. The squads were getting killed. And, and a lot of times in the squad cases, all you'll see is an interview, an FIS request, and they're closing the case based pending FIS request results. It's not even a closing, but they were doing that just to buy themselves time. So nobody is getting the proper amount of time to do their jobs. And I'm trying not to read the comments, but I just don't love the job because the job won't love you back. I never loved the job, man. Never.
No, feel free. Listen, read the comments. If you want to read the comments out, you want to acknowledge them. Our friends and listeners are an integral part of this podcast. We want them engaged. So, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'll get to a lot of those comments, especially afterwards. I'm going to answer everybody's questions. Don't worry.
You're going to be calling these people on the phone, right? There's somebody here, Land of Maple Leaf, that's been giving you a big shout out. So I'm sure they'll probably call you later to let you know who they are.
Nah, they won't. I don't think so. Because they, it's known. I'll just show up to your house because I've done it before. So it literally what happens. The exodus, it's going to continue, and I hope it does. Let them hire. I want them to obviously hire new cops. I want the NYPD to continue. I would love for them to get back to the prestige that they were. It was a prestigious department at one time when they were allowed to be cops. But let them hire these new guys who are going to take the nonsense and sign up from day one. I'm in this chat since I retired, and I deal with a lot of, I would say they're young officers. And I was talking to one of them yesterday about, he's like, he knows I'm coming on the podcast, and he's like, can you say something about the beanies, like the hats? Why can't they wear them under 32 degrees, and the rules with that? And I says, you know what, I'll mention that. Stuff like that. Like, who cares? It's an NYPD uniform. As long as it's NYPD approved, who cares what the weather is? Everybody's comfort zone is different. These are little things that the NYPD could do to make people's lives better, the morale better, and they don't do them. Yeah, stuff like that. Tattoos. Everybody has a tattoo in this day and age. Stop with the nonsense. Like, what are we, the Yankees? Like, we don't have to wear a certain haircut. We don't have to do certain things to do good police work. And it's got to change. Tisha's making a lot of changes, but what is she doing to better the morale in the police department? The exodus is going to continue until the morale, they refuse to acknowledge that people are mentally drained. We just had a suicide the other day. One of my partners in anti-crime was a victim of that. And he's the reason that I still continue to do all this stuff. People want to say, oh, Mike's retired. Why does he still care about this stuff? Because I felt like the job turned its back on me. And I felt like I dealt with a lot of bully supervisors. And my friend Rob, rest in peace, he was bullied on this job. And, I have to continue to fight for him. And that's what it's about. I will always fight for those that don't have the courage to fight for themselves.
So Mike, as far as like overall management of the job, in your opinion, how do you feel it's being managed under the Adams administration. You had three police commissioners and four police commissioners. Four in the last 3 years. You've had a mishmash of police commissioners. Kaz Daughtry has been running rampant throughout the police department. Jeffrey Madry. What are your thoughts overall, management? How has that affected the morale in the NYPD?
Terrible. I mean, everybody's miserable. They're not managing the police department. They are parading around and just trying to better themselves. Kaz Daughtry is a slap in everybody's face that is way more qualified than him. I wish Kaz would live up to his potential if he was a real detective, but he's not. He rode the coattails of the worst chief that we ever had, in my opinion. And, it would have been a great story, a detective coming up the ranks and, now doing great things. I think about if I got that opportunity, how many lives I would have changed. It could be done in 2 days. I literally wrote out a plan how to do it in 2 days. And it's a shame because they don't care about what's important. Nothing that's of importance is what's being changed. Drones, like, come on, man, drones. Seriously? And I never had a personal issue with him. I did meet him at the end of my career. He came in the office for what he said would be a 2-minute presentation. Now, imagine trying to explain facial identification in 2 minutes. But he's so important that I guess that's how much time he had. It was a Saturday. I was in the office by myself. He came in with another guy. I hope he didn't see my computer because I was watching you guys. So that's the funny thing. And you know what? Sometimes I wonder if the end of my career went the way it did because he did see my computer. Who knows? But when I was done with the presentation, he just walked out. No goodbye, nothing. He just walked out like I wasn't even a person. So I could tell you firsthand that that's the kind of person you're dealing with. No respect. And I didn't do nothing to this guy. We were detectives together in a sense. But these are the kind of people that you're dealing with. They don't measure the person. They don't measure the problems. It's just about them. So, I mean, and Kaz is something else.
We got an interesting. So Tom Joyce makes an interesting comment here, and I think I'd like to speak on that. If you could just challenge it. Tom Joyce is actually part of the Finest Unfiltered family. You probably saw him on here. Worked at Cold Case. Really intelligent guy. Very sensible. He says anti-crime in 1.5 years, 7 years to the squad, 10 years real-time crime, then FIS, and a path to a post-secondary career as a subject matter expert. Sounds pretty good to me. Now, on its face, he's right. But so tell us really what's the inner lines of the police department for you? Because on its face, someone would say, "Hey, you've had a pretty good career." So what was the biggest part you would say that impact you to feel that, hey, this job is just went downhill? And even for you, someone that had these great experiences being in specialized units.
Yeah, from the outside looking in, you look at my career and you say, "Wow, it's pretty blessed." And I do have a career beyond my retirement. I have skills. I have already acted as an expert witness for cases in Texas, believe it or not. I'm doing other things. I have I'm working with other companies with facial identification software, sold my interface. So, it's a lot of different things that I've done. And I did, I don't know if you think that's quick that I moved up into the squad with 7 years on, but when I was doing that, people were moving up with 3-4 years on. So, and they didn't have to deal with, "Hey boss, I need this CO's recommendation signed." "Oh yeah, I'll get it to you. When do you need it by?" "I need it by the 31st. I'll have it to you for the 1st. Like they had no shame saying that. And I had to deal with that time and time again. And you see this because you start seeing the people that you're doing anti-crime with in other commands, they're going to the squad and you're still doing anti-crime. When we had 7 years on in anti-crime, people with 3 years were going in the squad. So, then when I get to real time, I didn't get there. I didn't have a phone call. I earned my way in. I had the background. So it's not like I had a phone call to get there, or I had some secret shortcut to get there. But what ended up to be my career was just the tip of the iceberg. What it should have been, what my career should have been, that is not what was seen. I should have been a second grader in my 15th year. The things that I was doing, you could take me and put me in any squad in the city, but you can't take certain people. You can't take most people from the 4-6 squad or the 5-2 squad or wherever they are and put them in FIS and have them remove a face, and do a mask removal was what I called it. So I was interchangeable, but what I was doing wasn't. So, a lot of people think that we just push buttons and stuff. I proved that I didn't. I can't tell you how many times I proved it. So for me, and I had to deal with a lot of nonsense. I had to deal with all these lying bosses and, getting, in trouble for nonsense. Every little thing that I did was scrutinized because it's jealousy. When, my old partner, we just did a little podcast together, and he says it best. When you're honest and you tell them that you're leaving at 20, they're going to treat you different. Should have never did that, but I'm an honest guy. When you love your job and you work hard, the job don't love you back. And again, another mistake I made. But this is who I am. I'm not going to change who I am to affect my career. So that's what it was.
So, there's like an old saying that like those closest to the problem often have the best solutions. So there's an exodus of experienced detectives. There's an exodus of youth in the police department. There's an exodus of experience throughout the entire job. DEA President Scott Monroe he's been out in the news lately, and he's basically pushing that if they extend money to detectives to keep experienced detectives, and I believe it's if you stay 25 years, you'll get an extra 5% in your pension, and if you stay an extra 10 years and do the 30 years, you'll get an extra 10% in your pension. In your opinion, will Scott's Monroe plan help to alleviate the exodus of experienced detectives? And what do you think the job needs to do to retain people like yourself? What could the job have done to retain Mike Furia? How could you have still been there?
Well, first, let me start. I didn't know Scott Monroe was actually the president. I thought it was Gilberto Ortiz, the Hispanic Society vice president. But back to Scott Monroe. Thanks for fighting. I appreciate that. The money thing, it will save a lot of detectives. There are some detectives that will push their own mothers down an elevator shaft to get promoted, to get money. I was never one of those people. I could care less about money. You can't buy me. I wouldn't have stayed for that deal. I would have had to stay another 5 years to get the second grade, the fake second grade, which most of these nepotism guys, that's what they have, fake second grade. It's not real. It's not authentic. So that's not something I would ever be proud of. And there's going to be millions of people that get it. There's probably going to be some people that get promoted because I'm on this podcast. So, with that being said, you're going to retain the wrong type of detective. You're going to retain the guy that only cares about money. What about the guy that's talented? What about the guy that's, running around in the 9-4 squad? He don't want to be there. He's running around the 7-3, the 7-5. He's doing his job. He's doing everything he could do. And he's not getting the recognition he deserves. There's units like facial recognition. There's units, specialized units. They're not getting recognition. Different places in this job. A lot of people want just to see that their work is being recognized. So will it save people? Yeah, it will retain certain people, but that's not the answer. If you just care about money, why'd you become a cop? I used to say that to people all the time. Why? this is the best you could do. You should have went to school, be a doctor. Do something like, why did you become a cop to make money? And if that's the case, then move up the ranks, study, I wish.
You're absolutely right.
If I could go back in time, I would have just studied. I mean, I had no desire to be a boss, but it would have been better for my career. I mean, compared to what I went through.
There's no doubt about it. We talk about it all the time, right? If you're seeking, a high salary, a successful income, policing is not going to be on your radar. And there's no doubt about it to me. You're living proof that it's not about money, because you talked about being home and you're working on those cases from home, not getting paid because you love it. You just love the job. You love being part of the solving problems, being part of the puzzle. That's what policing is. There's no doubt about it. You're a legit cop. That's what a cop is. I think salary is not even on the radar. What you're talking about is, I think, is the biggest impact. It's the internal pressures of the NYPD. It's the silver lining. It's the inner linings of what's going on as far as watering down the that gold shield. I mean, it used to mean something. It should be real pride to be a detective, and there's a large percentage. And I think John and Marlon had spoke about it on one of our prior podcasts, on the percentage of detectives that actually don't do any investigative work. It's a high number. It's pretty insane, especially how low
30%, something like that.
So think about that. 30% of detectives with the detective shield are not doing investigative work, just as you did. And with the staffing crisis, the numbers are so low. So that 30%, that percentage is actually an even greater impact. And I think that's really the problem. It's morale, it's camaraderie. And what you're saying, I don't think that you're asking for much. You're saying you just want to be recognized for having an innovative idea. What I'm waiting for, and I'm not surprised, and if you could tell me, because what I experienced in my career also is being pretty innovative when it came to tactics and doing anti-crime work, but someone else with high rank at one police plaza would take credit for it. Did that ever happen to you? Did anyone try to take credit for your innovative idea? Because, I mean, I think that's super impressive with the mask, you putting the faces there and showing that the initiation, that you have, that self-drive. Did anyone take credit for it? Where did that go? Because obviously, if we ever get to the point wearing masks again, that's very important. So where did that innovative idea go?
So it's funny because Kaz told me that day when I met him, I looked at it as the opportunity to tell him this is what I've been doing. So I took those whole 2 minutes he gave me and I says, let me show you about what I do. And I says, this is, the mask cases. I removed the face. And his response was, don't let city council know about this. They won't like it too well. And, that's what he's worried about. A lot of my bosses were afraid to articulate. Yeah. A lot of my bosses
got a meeting. They're probably listening to this right now. They have there's a meeting this week about the use of technology and restricting.
Absolutely.
I think it's on. I think it's tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken. So there's a meeting. They're having a meeting about this coming up, about restricting the use of facial recognition technology.
Good. I hope they take the whole unit down.
Timing's impeccable.
but it's a shame because it's such an easy thing to articulate. They should just have me come down and I'll show them how to do it. It's so simple. Why can't you use a software to bring you from 0 results to no results or improve results? You can't articulate that. You're not doing magic. You're not putting somebody else's. You're not changing the mugshots. You're not pointing at a photo array. There are so much worse things being done in the police department and in the city than using a photo to enhance, using software to enhance a photo. But a lot of the bosses that I dealt with were afraid to cross that bridge, and they wouldn't give me the platform to cross it because what if I got too much attention? What if I actually did get the recognition that I deserved? And they did steal the credit. Maybe not directly. A lot of times they would shout my name out very low. This Mike Furia did this. Nobody hears, or they'll put my name in small print somewhere. But behind closed doors, it was a different story. And I would, this is a community of facial recognition analysts. So they'd come back to me and they say, hey, I seen your work on so-and-so's PowerPoint. And I used to even make the PowerPoints for a lot of my bosses. A lot of work that they used to go around to these city conferences in Arizona and all over the place. I did the work. I did the logos, the unit logos. I did the PowerPoints. I copyrighted some stuff they tried using because I knew when they retired, they were going to try to use it. And then I had to send them cease to desist letters, so I had satisfaction with that. But, any chance they could get to get themselves promoted, they did. In the history of FIS, the only people that have ever been promoted are the bosses. Our lieutenant was promoted. We had 2 sergeants that were promoted, but never a detective. The people doing the work, never. So in so many aspects, they stole credit. It may not have been as transparent as you would think, but it was being done, and it's still being done.
Mike, what do you think about facial recognition technology now? So the way you guys are currently using it it's just going on criminal databases? Is there any partnerships with like corporations, any big corporations that are using facial recognition technology for their customers? Because I think a lot of some of the stuff, I gotta say, I agree with the city council when they talk about the civil liberties of it. Like, I'm like, why should my face get ran in there? And it's not 100%. It's not 100% accurate. The same protections that we basically have for DNA, right? Like, you're not just going to run my DNA. And I'm not a criminal, never been convicted of a crime, and now I get to play in the Super Bowl every time someone gets, you're looking for somebody. What are your thoughts on facial recognition technology? Just your personal perspective on it.
It's a great tool. It saves money, time. The amount of money that we saved the police department, we should have all been first graders, whether we deserved it or not. We saved millions, over time. But the bottom line is, should the average person be in the database? No, but if you were arrested, you should be. Now we're talking about lower level crimes. Maybe if you got a 511, a suspended license, should you go in that database? No, and there's certain parameters and there's certain ways that they work with these companies. I don't want to say the names of the companies or anything. They'll be knocking on my door, but certain things that they do to measure that. It's only active mugshots. It's mostly felonies. There are some misdemeanor arrests in there, and it's a great tool. I'm all for it, but the real time facial recognition, like if it was being done in real time at like a mass event, you'd have to kind of make a parameter and make it known that this area is being monitored by facial active real-time facial recognition. I don't know if they're actually doing that. Did you help Gil with his challenge coin designs? No, I did not help Gil with his challenge coin. I made my own challenge coin.
Did you get stuff done?
Yeah, no, I got too much done. So from here, but back to facial recognition, it was totally but it's a great tool. I can't, like I say, the problems I had in the unit, I can't discredit the value of facial recognition. It's a phenomenal thing. It's just nothing but good things to say about it.
So with that value, I assume that you testified quite often at court. I assume that you were called down to court with cases. So how well did that hold up in court? And did it have to collaborate and coincide with a six-pack photo array or a lineup? Does that stand alone? So if you could walk us through, obviously there's a lot of people on this also that are police enthusiasts or just citizens that never saw the court case play out. So like when you had to testify, how did this play out in court? If you could just walk us through that.
Man, Eric, thank you so much for asking that question. These rat bastards are going to love this answer. So unknown to a lot of people, just like the DMV photos, we never testified in court. Why? Because the person that would have to testify is the vendor of the software. Who would be come down to. Because for us, we're just giving back the person of interest as a possible lead. So it is the same as any one of us being in the squad, looking through Photo Manager and saying, you know what? I think that's the guy. And believe it or not, there are so many squad guys that are are definitely better than the people working in facial recognition. And I know this because when I was in the squad, there was a way to access this, which no longer available. But in the backdoor of Photo Manager, you used to go in the lineup view and you could actually put a face in and you can find that person if the photo was good enough. And I did this time and time again in the squad. I did it downstairs in real time. And that's why I was so prepared to do the job the way that I did it. A lot of old timers will tell you they benefited from that. But when it comes to court, I was called down a couple times. Ultimately, nobody ever testified. The judge, they don't feel a need for us because we're just giving a lead. It's just the same as you looking through a Photo Manager. And I do think Tish, she's Miss Technology, right? Make that accessible to everybody. Why do you need somebody looking, sending an ECMS request? You have to do all this. Just give it to the detectives. They're worried about them making mistakes, I guess, in the squad. But here's the thing. Who's monitoring the mistakes besides Mike Furia? I know all the mistakes. I got a whole folder full of them. But who outside of FIS is monitoring the mistakes? I seen matches that went back to dead people. So, we've made mistakes. So why can't the squad make mistakes? They'll save time though. And it's not like when you're in the squad, you're putting a suspect icon on somebody. How many times does that not pan out? It doesn't pan out a lot. It's when you arrest a person that's, falsely arrest a person, that's when you're going to have problems. And that could happen whether you do the facial recognition or I do it. Give the technology to everybody. Stop with the nonsense. Give the accurate codes. Give all the stuff. You don't need all this nonsense anymore. The real time was great when it was 2010, 2011. Everybody today knows how to use a computer. Technology improved. The job. When is the job going to move to modern technology? Why are we still doing things the old-fashioned way? The squad guys will tell you, give them the tools. They're great. They're better than the people that are in real time. So let them do it.
And I think that's important that you highlight that. And that's so what you guys are doing is essentially just giving a lead. You're not giving probable cause, saying this is your guy. This is saying this is probably your guy. Now, based upon your evidence, your investigation, talking to the individual, it might in fact be your guy. It appears to be your guy. Here's that lead. So I think that's important to highlight. That it's basically a tool. It's not really anything that's used negatively too. So I think that's important. I appreciate you speaking about facial recognition because it is a hot topic and it's going to continue to be a hot topic as technology improves. So with that being said, though, what are your thoughts overall on how people are being promoted to the rank of detective? Do you think that there is a better way? Do you think we spoke about this a little bit with Detective Mike Smith recently? We were speaking about should there be standards in place for someone to go into an investigative squad? What are your thoughts around that?
Yes, absolutely. When you're entering the squad, you go on those interviews. If it was being done fairly, it could work. But is it being done fairly? Or is it still, you have to know somebody if that's the way. I had to go on tons of interviews, But when it comes to promotion, there's a lot that could be changed. Just look at this interview, for example. I've told you guys a little bit, a tenth of what I've done in facial recognition, just with the mask removals. That's a tenth of my skills. And I know, you guys are probably impressed. A lot of people are probably impressed just from the stories. Now, imagine if I went before a panel and I got the opportunity to fully express what it is that I did on a day-to-day basis. If it's not a biased panel and it's done with some anonymous kind of system in place, names kind of leave it out a little bit. I think that might be more beneficial. We have to kind of take away the opportunity to say, hey, listen, Mike Furia is up for promotion. Can you put his name at the top of the list? As far as I was concerned, Joseph Cortesis, my CO in 2017, the first year I was in facial recognition, he put me in for promotion. And this was one of the times I knew it wasn't bullshit, because he personally told me, like, he took me, I dropped him off at a Christmas party. It was just me and him in the car. And he told me, I want you to know, I know you've been up there the least amount out of everybody, but you're the best at what you do. So I'm putting you in for promotion. From there, I don't know the next 4 or 5 times they put me in. I don't know if it was ever actually done. I just know that one time, right? I know another time where my paperwork was signed, but I don't know what happened to it after. Where's it going? The 49s that they have to be written, right? They have our cases on them. They have our experience. What are they being used for? It's just complete nonsense. If you could take my wording and my skills directly that I wrote and put it on somebody else's paperwork, and then that person gets promoted for cases that they didn't do, taking credit for assisting in investigations where cops were killed, and they get promoted on that. Number one, there's a special place in hell for that detective that allowed that to happen. But number two, what are the people that are reviewing these things or even mentioning the names? How is this process being done? It's disgusting. So it has to change.
Could you elaborate on that a little bit? Like, you're talking
Absolutely.
about someone
Yeah.
using someone else's stuff to get promoted. Like, what do you mean by that?
Okay, so my biggest enemy on this job was prior to later on, was my sergeant, and we had a lot of back and forths after that Chief Baldessano incident that I told you about. I went to see him about the mask removals. I had a big blowout with my boss. We had a closed door. It was in front of 2 other guys. I go into his office. Now it's just me and him. And now I have the ability to kind of really tell him how I feel. And it got ugly. If they ever wanted to get me in trouble, that was their opportunity. I have to give him credit. At least he didn't rat me out like the people today that ratted me out. But I end up telling this guy that, I can't stand him. I said things that they had me at discourteous, 100%. Anyway, to kind of take that to another level, he's now trying to butter me up later on. Oh, Mike, you're still in my good graces. I'm still going to keep putting you in for promotion. All nonsense, right? He tells me, send me, you're a great writer. Send me what you want written in your 49 for promotion, and we'll work on that. All right. Why not? I'm not bringing this to his attention. He's bringing it to me. Okay. I write up my application on my 49, all that stuff, right? He sends it back. Mike, this is a little too good. Let's dumb it down a little bit. All right. I do that. And I don't think nothing of it. A year later, he retires. We get a new boss up there. And long story short, I get admin rights. Now I have access to a lot of things in real time that they never wanted me to have access to. And legitimately, ITV gave me admin rights. This is nothing, I did that was corrupt or anything. ITV is responsible for this. So I'm looking through the folders with 49s and promotional paperwork, right? And I see another detective's promotion paperwork with my exact wording from that email with that document. I have video of it. I've put it on other posts. And somehow it ends up on his paperwork. I told other bosses about it later on. Everybody denied it, obviously. I even went to see the guy post-retirement and ask him about it. How does that happen?
What was the paperwork? Was it the detective's paperwork, or was it the supervisor's paperwork? Who was using your words?
So I send a Word document, right, in an email. Now, this Word document, the words go from the exact document goes from my name to this other detective's name, and he took credit for a case that I did, cases that other people did, and my coworkers knew about this. I told them. So that's where the mutiny began.
Well, obviously the supervisor's involved, but what I'm asking is who's supposedly drafting that letter? Is it the supervisor or is it the detective?
Yeah, the supervisors.
It's the supervisor.
Yeah, he did it. So I don't know how he could deny it. He was the only one I sent it to. So how does it go from his hands? He wants, if you look at the document and you go on the properties, the author says this guy, I'll say his name, Lieutenant George Brown. But that doesn't mean that Lieutenant George Brown is the person that did this. It could have been him. I don't know. I know he was in favor of this detective way more than me. But at the end of the day, how does my wording and all this stuff end up on his document with his name on it, signed by the CO, Janice Holmes? How?
I want to tell you this. I think that, first of all, it's someone puts it, it's really a douchebag move. But we know that things like that happen. Unfortunately, they happen in many organizations, but it's happening more and more often in the NYPD. But I want to thank you. The breakdown that you explained of how it's an invaluable tool, facial recognition, to assist in a case, and that it doesn't necessarily meet the parameters of probable cause is excellent. And your knowledge is exemplary. And it's a shame that the NYPD is losing someone like you and John, myself, people with experience, and so the breakdown and the understanding that you have of this unit, it's a shame to lose such a vast amount of knowledge. So Ron Layson made a comment here. Shout out to our brother. He's from the Executive Perspective. The FU family, that FU family stands for Finance Unfiltered, not the FU. If it's not a biased panel, conversation ends there, unfortunately. You need someone to push you and to keep you relevant. Something John and I always talk about. Why do they need to keep you relevant? So that's the problem where nepotism would seep into these panels. Well, if there's any criteria, if you had a breakdown as far as, because I know John asked you about what would be necessary to be an investigator. What criteria do you think someone should have? What tools, what criteria in their background? Should be a certain amount of arrest, should be a certain amount of units, years on the job. What criteria do you think someone should have before they're looked at to go to this panel?
So they should definitely be of investigative background. I've worked with a lot of supervisors in real time that have zero investigative background. Not to say that somebody like yourself who just did amazing work in plainclothes can't do that, but there's just certain procedures and certain things that, in the detective bureau itself, you have to be familiar with, and you have to understand the difference between detectives. Just because numbers say one thing doesn't mean that it's accurate. Like if you look up my total amount of matches in comparison to the fake juvenile crime detectives I worked with, you'll see I'm probably like second or third in the rankings or whatever it is, which is still high, obviously, but it has no, bearing on my actual talent, because that doesn't take into consideration that I managed a database that spent hours of my day. I did everyone's PowerPoints. I managed the intranet page. I did so many other tasks. So you need somebody that's actually looking at everything that's being done by this detective and by it's competition. And see, that's the word right there, competition. Why is it a competition? And it becomes a competition because everyone is so into the promotion process that how could it not be? It's not a fair game. So when something's not fair, it's going to become a competition, and unfortunately it's a ruleless and a lawless competition. There's, it's everyone's out for themselves. And that's why, a lot of squads fall, because there's no camaraderie anymore. So, when you say panel with this panel, you got to have you got to have people that know how the entire process is going from squad to specialty unit, and you have to just know everybody's role.
Well, imagine you're on that panel, right? Let's put Mike Furia on that panel today. What are you looking for? You want to put a guy in your unit. What are you looking for in that guy? Or what are you looking for to say, that's a detective, that's an investigator?
Well, for starters, I want somebody that has investigated cases. I want somebody that at least at least once in his life, maybe interrogated a criminal in the box. How many people are promoted? They've never interrogated a criminal, whether it's on patrol or as a detective. How do you wear a detective shield outside the community affairs specialist, which is a whole nother story, and not be, all these TV shows, you see detectives in the interview room. How do you're going to go home and tell your family, oh, I'm a first grade detective. I never even dealt with a criminal in my life. It kills me. My old partner says it best. The best thing to do is give them a different kind of shield. They were talking about corporals once back in 2012 or something like that. Something in between detective and police officer. You want to reward a cop for doing great work, give them that shield. I don't even care if they make more money than me. It's not even about that. But when it comes to promoting somebody, I want to look for somebody that has good interrogation skills. I want to look at somebody that is always on top of his cases. I don't have to keep telling him, type this case. You're falling behind. I don't have to keep correcting his mistakes. Time and time again, I would come across people's mistakes, tell my boss about it, because the people I work with got tired of hearing me correct them. It was a whole mutiny. But you want detectives that just give it their all. You know right away. Like when you're in the squad, who's the guy to go to. Who you could depend on. Who could speak, who could articulate things. And articulation is a lot about it. Like, just look about what we were talking about with technology. We got a whole, Kaz Daughtry and all these people. They have to explain about facial recognition. What do they know about it? What do they know about technology? But it's very easy to say that you're successful in it. My old lieutenant, all he does is talk about his success, but he has zero background. The guy can't even make a PowerPoint. So how could he articulate all this stuff?
Because he doesn't have the integral knowledge of it, right? And I think that's the problem with all of city management. What do you think about Kaz Daughtry's Shark Week program? It's starting up again. I was listening to him at a town hall yesterday, and he's talking about the drones. And what do you think about the whole drone program in the NYPD and the hype these drones got? When you talk about solving cases here, you talk about public safety. What do you think the drones' effect on public safety has been? I'll personally say I think the use of them in barricaded situations is definitely good. Give a top-down view. Other than that, I really don't see too much use for them in policing, other than to get up in places that we can't get, give us a high bird's eye view of things, parades. But overall, the hype around it, the drone as the first responder program, what are your thoughts around that?
I'm all for technology. The drones could be used the right way. They could be used in the mass parades and stuff like that. Certain situations, you want to have view of these things, but how much is it really going to do? There's what is the best that we could get out of a drone? That we're not already getting from a camera. We have cameras everywhere. So now I guess it's a small tool. It's not an end all of program. It's not going to change the police department. Again, you'll do more by allowing them to wear the beanies in certain weather than those drones are going to do. So, let's fix the morale before we worry about the drones. I just want to point out though, there's this sergeant. His name's Richard Narog. He started a lot with these drones, and he gets no credit for it. I'm not friends with the guy or anything, but he has the success stories with the drones. And it's funny because all you hear about is Kaz taking the success with it. So there was a whole panel before Kaz that was dealing with drones, and those guys should get the credit. I could relate to them because look what was done with me. Somebody mentioned about Word documents being time-stamped and all that stuff in the comments. I just want to point that out, that this was the exact document that I had sent to, an email. So I don't know where he's going with that. And nevertheless, the words on the paperwork say everything. So I don't know if he's trying to accuse me of bullshitting with the whole paperwork.
No, I think he's just trying to say that like it's there, like the proof's there. Like
Yeah,
it's,
no, they know. They know it's there. They just don't want to see it. You know.
Mike, just to go back on that 1 second, did you file a complaint about that? I mean, and the wording on the document was obviously cases you dealt with, and the other person didn't.
So I reached out. Again, I don't care about grade. I don't care about money, but I don't like that was done to me. That was like the most corrupt thing that I seen done to me. I reached out to a lawyer, and he's a very popular lawyer. Takes a lot of cases for the black community, and he straight up told me if I was black, he'd take my case. You know, being a white detective was kind of, I guess, a negative aspect. He told me I had the option to file an EEO, but what's going to happen? And he even knew, you know, from outside the department, that if I file an EEO, I'm going to be hurt my last 18 months. I was even ready to come on the show at 18 months. And John, you advised me obviously not to, because it's going to kill my career. And I would have never got all the overtime that I did get. That's the only thing I was fortunate enough to get. So I wasn't going to make an EEO. I was going to document it. I was going to save it. And I was going to wait till I retired to announce it. But a lot of my bosses did know. You know, I was vocal with them because I wanted to have the opportunity today to say, you guys knew. You could have helped me. You know, maybe you couldn't have gotten me promoted, but there was a lot more you could have done for me. And when I really got in trouble, there was definitely a lot that you could have done for me to make my life easier. You know, so that's what it is.
Listen, it's not a big task to ask. That's the same thing that I always ask for, is just support and backbone. I had 8 sets of administrative charges from CCRB in 6 weeks. And I didn't expect them to eradicate it, but I asked for some support and some backbone to stand up for me. And that's what you're asking for. I don't think that's a tall order at all. But you're left alone and you're kind of discarded and abandoned. That's what happens, unfortunately, with this job, right? You get leprosy if, you know, when you're in a situation. But I think you had a hell of a career. And I love the fact that you keep reiterating that's not about salary, right? It's about, you know, it's about police work. It's about honor, strength and honor, right? That detective, that gold shield should mean something to you. If you're sitting at a party or your family says, wow, hey, I met so-and-so in a parking lot or a shopping center. They know you, Detective so-and-so. And you're like, that's no detective, right? You know, that person never did an investigative work. That person just drove someone around. You want that detective shield to mean something because it means something to you. That's where I think is where we lose camaraderie, destroys morale because it's so watered down. I mean, we see people like Ingrid Sanders, who got promoted 3 times in a 2-year span from detective 3rd grade to detective 1st grade for her relationship with Jeffrey Madry. What does that do to somebody like you, who's so innovative, helping solving cases and valuable tools, has so much knowledge, you know, an expert witness? It tips the scales, and it really waters down the shield. But with that being said, I mean, obviously, you still love the job. You made it to 20 years. What can we do to motivate these detectives right now, or those that are coming to the squad or your unit? How do we motivate them under this leadership? Or is that the only answer right now, is a mass exodus? I mean, how do we motivate these guys if it's not changing?
Wow. I mean, it really has to start with morale, because we have to make cops in general feel appreciated. And before we could even fix the promotion problems, we have to make cops feel appreciated and useful. And we have to instill the right trust in them again. There's no trust for a cop. I mean, you go to a detail, you can't have a car with you. You know, I couldn't even, somebody mentioned about the EEO process. I couldn't trust that process. You know, I work with somebody, 5 girls made an EEO against this guy. I call him the girl bully. None of those EEOs were recognized until somebody and a group of people that are in the limelight made an EEO against him. It took the right people. You know, it's just like nepotism with promotion. The right people get things done. So this person was, you know, left alone. They never bothered him. All these girls are making the same complaint about him. But when the right person does it, something's finally done. You know, so I'm not going to trust that process. The guy is still there. I mean, the 5 girls that made the original 5 girls, they no longer work there. So what does that say? Like, who's protecting this guy? It's disgusting. Now to look further into it, how to keep people's past 20, it's so hard for me to answer that question because I would never, ever have stayed. You could have gave me first grade, and the people that I worked with knew that. Like, I used to say it all the time. You give me first grade right now, I'm still walking out the door. Too much was done to me. I'm mentally damaged from the NYPD. The post-traumatic stress that I have, just I couldn't sleep last night just knowing that I'm coming on this show today. I've been waiting for this for a long time, to get a lot of this stuff out. And I've seen too much. So to save somebody that's damaged like me with 20 years on, I think it's a lost cause. But maybe somebody with 10 years on, 12 years, you want to make their career better. Stop going crazy with this disciplinary matrix. Stop, putting these guys up for trial for homicides when the thing that they did wrong was, a nonsense offense.
I'm glad. I don't want to interrupt you, but I'm glad you mentioned the disciplinary matrix. I never, other than myself and John, I never hear anyone actually recognize the disciplinary matrix. Did you actually read it? You have the understanding of the disciplinary matrix?
When I was in trouble last year, I was reading into it a little bit because I really thought they were going to try to go after me even more than they tried. So I got a little familiar with it, but ridiculous. Like,
what were you in trouble for? Do you want to tell the audience about that? Like, what happened to you?
All right. So in my unit, I was constantly working. Like I said, I work from home. If I had a big case that needed attention, everything that we worked on was in the news. I knew chiefs were going to call on it in the morning. I worked nights. I was usually there till 3 a.m. every night. And I'd be back in the next day. If you needed me from home, my boss knew how to get in touch with I was always available to anybody, whether I liked you or not. I knew how to take off my personal hat and treat you as a detective, whether I liked you or not. Every case I had was constantly being scrutinized as, oh, the chief's looking at this. We need this work done. We have to reassign the case. No, you don't. Just call me. I'll come in as if this was the squad and I had an iCard. I'll come in. Stop touching my work. And I had these conversations with my coworkers. They could not follow the good ethics that are displayed in squads every day. Because they're not detectives. They're juvenile crime detectives. So they just didn't get it. Maybe it was they just didn't like me. I don't know. I really don't care. Bottom line is, leave my case alone. On this, after months and months of dealing with this, with the lieutenant and the detectives themselves, I had a case come in. It was a homicide. Actively working on it, and it turns out that it's assigned to one of my coworkers, somebody that I didn't have an issue with. And I helped her out. I did the work. I ran the photo. I got the documents ready. I emailed her all the documents. She thanked me for it. I told the boss, who ended up calling IAB on me. He was on board with me. I know you don't want to touch it. Just leave it. Great job. Blah, blah, blah. Right? I end up the night. I told my coworker, my friends in the office, I says, you know what's going to happen? Somebody's going to take this case. Somebody else is going to put their name on this work. Now, I had put her name on it. I didn't even put my name on it. I put her name on it. The next day I come to work. I knew what was going to happen. I'm on my way in. I'm making phone calls. I even told the lieutenant, I says, I'm on my way in right now. This is what I'm coming into. The story, he was telling me good job about something. I says, yeah, good job, my ass. But the stories, you're always telling me I'm the hero, but you're writing the story for me to be the villain. And that's my exact text to him. As soon as I get in, I had my wife with me prior to going into work. I had my mom on the line, and everybody's telling me, Mike, just let it go. You're at the end of your career. Just let these people mess with you, and that's it. And I went in with that mentality. But when I got in, I was going in on my day off for transit overtime. I'm getting dressed. I'm picking up one of my coworkers in the office, and this kid, who I always had. When I say kid, he's 50-something years old. So he's not a kid, but I always had a pretty decent relationship with him. Did we genuinely like each other? Probably not. But did he still invite me over his house to give me chlorine for my pool? Yeah, obviously. So it wasn't like we hated each other, right? We have a conversation about the case. What happened is he took my exact document, just like the promotional paperwork, took this girl, which was his partner, took her name off of it and puts his name on it. Doesn't change anything. The photo's the same. And his excuse is, well, the boss told me to do it. Wait, I just spoke to that boss the other night about this. So how come nobody reached out to me? I don't know. The boss tells me to do something, bro. I got to do it. If the boss is telling me to do something, right? That's how he talks. So I says, no, sometimes you have to be a man and you have to make your own decisions and say, you know what, boss, this is probably not the right thing to do. And from there, it was a calm conversation. What he says next as I'm walking away is, it's always me, Mike. It's always me. And I said, you know what? It is always you. You may not be the only person in this office that doesn't like me, but you're the only one that takes my cases. Everybody else knows to leave it alone. And he didn't like that answer. And all of a sudden, he went from a timid guy to well beyond his masculinity. Let's just say that. And this is a guy I never had issues, like I never took him as a fight. Like, I think you kind of get where, my demeanor, I'm down for whatever. This guy was not like that. He lacked masculinity. So now I'm back at his desk and we're arguing, and, we go back and forth. No big deal. We're toe to toe. Our bodies are touching each other. And, he says, what are you going to do about it? Man, I'm the wrong guy to say that to. Yeah, and you know what? No punches were thrown. Nobody was physically hurt. 2 people that are his friends intervened. So, they saved potentially a fight, that never occurred. And there was another person in the office that they never even acknowledged for being there because he was my friend. But long story short, I leave that day after challenging him to smoker and challenging him to come over my house and all this nonsense, right? I leave that day and I come back after the weekend and I'm being told that IAB is involved with this now. So that sergeant, the girl bully, goes and he emails the lieutenant. The lieutenant sends it up to the CO. And now the CO is saying, well, you know what we have to do now because it went up through channels and we have documents of this, right? So I think that the lieutenants who say that they're my friends could have easily just took us to the side and squashed this kind of, and at least been like, listen, is there going to be a problem? Obviously, no. We don't want to get in trouble further. But you know how you beat the best? You take out the best. And the way for him to be the best was to get rid of me. So I seen the writing on the wall, and I knew that going in. The next day, I'm coming to work. This guy that calls IAB on me, hey, Mike, how you doing? I look at him. I just stare him in the face like, I'm not going to fucking say hi to you now. Sorry. I'm not going to say hi to you now after this. Like, you have some balls to think that I'm going to, acknowledge you. What does he do? He tells on me. Mike's discourteous. He didn't say hello to me. So it was a whole process for something that was dramatized. He made this. I wish somebody would foil this email. He made this sound like a WWF match when it was just men being men in the squad. My old partner will tell you this is something that happens in every squad in the city over cases. But this was their opportunity to hurt me at the end of my career. They put me downstairs in real time for the next 5 months or so.
What happened to the guy you got in the argument with?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
So Tariq Shepard could push the former temporary police commissioner, but you can't have a heated argument with another detective in the office? Again, goes back to what I always say: different standards in the police department. You're part of general population.
And Eric, just from a boss's standpoint, if two guys get into an argument in the office, do you take one of their sides, or are they both wrong?
First of all, if I ever took someone's side and actually made an IAB complaint, I would never have teams. Of course, we had guys, have heated arguments in the office. I had guys even like wrestle together that never left the office. That's sometimes men have to get things out. Listen, Tariq Shepard pushed the police commissioner, the former policeman. He got away with it. That was in public. In public. To me, that's a problem. You guys had a heated argument in the detective's office, and sometimes, honestly, it's healthy. It's primal for men to get these things out. You know what? You didn't go to blows. It shouldn't happen anyway. But you had a heated argument. It should have stayed there. That's it. The fact that it left that office, that tells me a lot about what's going on with that supervision.
Yeah, no, it was, the writing was on the wall. This sergeant was mad at me because a year before, when he was supposed to come to the unit, I kind of orchestrated it so that some other boss that worked in real time knew about the opening. It was supposed to be done backdoor, but I kind of revealed the curtains, and he had to wait like an extra year to get in his position. So he was out to get me for that reason. And probably many more. But long story short, now I'm in real time. I'm doing nonsense checks and all this stuff that I couldn't stand doing the first time I was there. And I'm working with some people, great people. I had the opportunity to work with. And the lieutenant that, was always telling me I'm his friend, that I'm a great guy, blah, blah, blah. I asked him, just send me to Brooklyn Smarts, do social media. I'll be in Brooklyn. So, get me out of here. You guys want me out? It's an easy ask. It's just do it. You don't have to transfer me. I'll sign in. I'll come here and sign in and then go there if you want, whatever you want to do. But they gave me all this pushback. They wanted to see me suffer, and they thought that by putting me in real time, I was suffering, when in reality, all I was doing was just watching your show and writing my book. But
it worked out great. You have more time to watch the podcast.
Absolutely. It was actually the best 5 months of my time in real time, because I got to know the vehicle guys, the VIG unit. They track cars. They're the most unappreciated detectives on this job. So it was a lot of benefits from that. But during the process that I went through was terrible, because they're delaying the whole GO15 interview. They're telling me, don't worry, IAB is going to kick it back down to the precinct. That was done. They didn't tell me that was done for another month. And now another month passes, and I finally walk in to see this guy Kirsting, and I tell him, listen, man, the guys that you got running the show, the CO wasn't there. We had changed COs. So now we had this new guy. He didn't really know too much about the problem. And now I'm in here, and he's pretty much telling me, you're leaving at 20 years, and I got a whole room of guys that don't like you. So that's, the writing was on the wall.
Is this him in the chat right now?
Joseph, what was done to him? That's his name. Yeah.
Probably him right there.
Yeah, it sure seems like it.
I don't know. I don't think he has the balls to watch the show.
He's still on the job?
It might be one of the cowards that, he's still on the job.
Just using a fake name.
He's using
There's
I
not
agree with
on their account anymore.
I agree with Land the Make Believe. Land the Make Believe definitely is in your corner. Mm-hmm. Says the bosses are the reason cops fight. That's a good point.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Absolutely.
Spot on. I don't know who that is. Give me a call. Let me know who you are. I'll keep you anonymous, but spot on.
With this particular detective, it wasn't really the bosses. He's a brown nose. So yeah, it was the boss, but it had to do with he was dying for promotion. The guy's 54 years old. He lives he has plenty of money. He's he's not a poverty stricken guy. He's well off, but he's just that power. He should have been a chief, But just to sum it up, this guy Kirsten's telling me, I'd rather have you mad at me than 2-3 other detectives. And you should never say that to anybody. Especially he didn't know my value in the unit. He barely knew me, but he was going with the popular belief, and he was siding with he knew the sergeant that called IAB on me. So every month I kept pushing this. They finally do the interview, and they never interviewed my friend that was in the room with me, who probably would have swayed the direction of that interview, because now I would have had 2 people to say, it wasn't as bad as what the other three people were saying, you know. But I never wanted to bring him into that interview. I didn't want to bring him there if nobody else did, because I'm not a rat. Why make somebody else have to get GO 15 if he doesn't have to? I'll deal with this on my own, right? So I go. I end up taking a CD for 5 days for they labeled it as a physical dispute or something like that. I don't know what they labeled it as.
What about the other guy in the altercation? Does he get a CD?
Nothing happened to him. Nothing. He was in the
you
office
as the
every day.
aggressor. He takes your case. He takes your case that you did, that you gave to this other girl. He puts his name on it. You confront him about it. He says, "What are you going to do about it?" So to me, he's the aggressor, and you only get in trouble for it.
You know, you could, the minute you say, "What are you going to do about it?"
You're the aggressor.
It's on.
What are you going to do about it?
It's on, right? Was I the more intimidating guy? Was I maybe yelling louder? Yeah, I'll take credit for that. But I never said that. I never said, "What are you going to do about it?" I says, all of a sudden you're a tough guy. And, that I'm guilty of saying. There are certain things that I did say, and I take credit for all of it. But I think that this was premeditated. I think this was planned.
I don't have any issues. That's two men having a battle in an office. It's primal. Get it out.
Right.
Yeah, but Eric, here's the issue, dude. Here's the issue. The issue is you called IAB and you went the whole 9 with it. So how do you just say one person's? How do you?
I agree. Absolutely. That's absolutely ridiculous.
Both of them now need to be. Both of them should have been removed from the office, and both of them should have got issued discipline.
No doubt. It takes. Well, we talk about that all the time, right? Equal distribution of discipline. I agree. It takes 2 to tango, and it takes 2 to fight. You can't fight by yourself. So there's no doubt about it. To have a heated argument, it had to be a two-way conversation. So again, it goes back to who's he hooked up with? What's his connections? Rules for me, not for me. There's 3 tiers in this department. Obviously, you're part of general population. Obviously, he's not.
Right. Well, it's hard to say who he's hooked up with because he's still a 3rd grader. So I don't know if he's hooked up with the right people, but I know he's hooked up with the lieutenant. They have a 6 to 8 precinct. He pretends he doesn't like him. And it's just the land of make-believe over there. But at the end of the day, I was totally fine. You want to blame me for starting this whole thing. I'll take credit for it. I even told them, you don't have to give him a CD. Give me the CD, but let's move on with this. I don't want to be jammed up. I'm planning on retiring in January. Just let me do my job. I'll even do my job from downstairs. You don't want me in this office? Fine. I was all for it, but they didn't want me in the unit. They were dead set on that. And my CO ends up telling the best part about this whole thing, but I don't want to forget it, is these rats that ratted me out to this rat that called IAB on me, they just ratted him out about something. So right now, he's in trouble. So I just want to point out the office, maybe they need to look at the juvenile crime detectives that are working there. Maybe they need to look at them because although the boss didn't have the right decision making, those detectives, juvenile crime guys, maybe that's the problem. I'm just going to say that. This would never happen in the squad. So, long short, the CO tells me, get a chief. He says, if you want to stay in your unit, get a chief. And now this is after I already signed the CD and everything. And I told him, I says, if I knew a chief, would I be a 3rd grader? Like right now? Like, obviously, I don't know anybody, But I says, I will not be bullied. You're not going to bully me. And I did what I had to do. I made phone calls and I got a great person to finally recognize my work. And that chief went to bat for me. And they didn't even give me credit for that because they thought that I had some other detective help me out, but which wasn't the case. It was this chief that helped me. And after that, the guy Kirsting tells me, oh, no, that was nice. But now can you have that chief call Savino? I'm like, whoa, now you're making this even harder. So this chief's reaching out to Savino, and now this chief was from outside the detective bureau. Now you cross from bureaus. They don't like to do that. And, it was a very unpleasant circumstance. Finally, later on, as the month winded down, I got the union involved. And it was from outside of real time, obviously, because nobody in real time was going to help me. Nobody, I had to find the right delegate. And luckily, 2 delegates went and they spoke to Savino. I had a chief's blessing. I had a few things going my way, and thank God Chief Savino let me back in. I got to shake his hand, and he told me, directly, I said, thank you for the opportunity. He said, great job, kid, man. You have a hell of a reputation. I want you to kill the queue. Just don't kill anybody in the office. And I respect that. Like, he was a man. I worked for Chief Savino as a detective in the squad. So, it wasn't the first time that we had interaction with each other. Maybe he remembered me. I don't know. But I'm so appreciative to him and the chief that helped me out. And ultimately, that was the highlight of my career. And for me personally, that was better than promotion, because I kept, listen, you guys are not going to beat me. I'm a product of Bensonhurst. I'm a man before I'm a cop. And I was so proud of that moment. And I just killed the queue after that. And, we had 0 cases to work on within 2 months.
Mike, Samara, I think you say Samara Cohen. Awesome question. What did your delegates say? What did the DA get do if they got involved?
No, they did. And the 2 delegates that I dealt with, I don't want to name them. They're too good. They're 2 great people that I don't want to diminish their names because they were kind of reprimanded by the union for taking my side. That's how corrupt the union actually was when it came to this case. And that's why I'm always talking about the Hispanic Society Vice President Gil Ortiz, because when this was done, Gil used to work in real time, and he had ties, and he used to call it his unit. And this is a guy that got promoted because he drove the first step, and then he got promoted again because he drove the Commissioner Caban, and never had a case in his career. Another fake juvenile crime detective. Ultimately, he tells my union, how could you take sides? He even made my 2 friends in the union go to my office the next day and kind of apologize to my coworkers for allowing me the opportunity. Even though a chief let me back in, he allowed me the opportunity to do my job again. And Gil was a guy that I did artwork for him. I did paperwork, documents for his friend's towing company. I've done favors for these people. There's not one person in my career that I haven't helped. Even Blue Lives Matter. I've done Photoshop for everybody, so this guy's out to hurt me, for what reason? Why? Because I'm friends with certain people that he's not friends with. Now you're trying to affect my career. Mind your business. This had nothing to do with you. I went to other delegates. I didn't go to you. Mind your business. So he tried to hurt my career. And now look what he's doing. He's moving around. He gets sent out to All Out. He gets kicked out, and he's back in Taru. His wife's moved around 4 different times already. But when it was me and my career was on the line, it was no good. So although the union 2 guys did help me, it was a lot of stress. And, I think there's some people that aren't ever going to talk to me again that were my friends because of this situation.
So, Mike, another thing that I think a lot of detectives are dealing with today, and I'm just curious your thoughts on it. All Out. How had that affected your ability to do your job? What are your thoughts on All Out? Should it be? Is it more mismanagement from the job? Like, how do you feel about All Out?
All Out is a giant waste of time. They had me there with detectives that had over 23 years on the job. Some of them haven't been on a foot post in 15 years. What good were they going to be on the street? They put me at risk. My family had to worry about me. In my 20th year in East New York, you're putting me, and I couldn't pick who I wanted to go to All Out with. Like, this is the only police department in the world where I can't pick my partner. The girl that did roll call for us, she was out to get me. So, another juvenile crime detective, may I mention? I'm sure she's watching. So,
say hello.
how you doing, Ann? So, these people all out to get me, and I'm sitting there in All Out. I'm going, and they love, the only way they could hurt me at this point, now that I'm doing facial again, is send me to All Out. So now I'm going every Friday, Saturday, and it's just such a waste of time. Like, what is it really doing? Even when there is something going on, we kind of walk over to it, and we, unless we have to take action, we're going to wait for patrol to come. I mean, it's not because we don't want to. It's that because we're detectives with 18, 20, 25 years on the job. Why am I going to risk my career at the end of my career for a dispute or some nonsense that you want me to take action in when you're going to hang me from it? Look what they did to me over an argument. What am I going to do if I put my hands on somebody? Because don't forget, in anti-crime, the way I did things back in those days, you can't do them no more. I just started wearing a body camera with 6 months left in my career. I don't. You could give me all that training in the world. It was in one ear, out the other. I can't comply to those regulations. It's not going to happen. I was going to get a CD. When it came to transit overtime, I was all for it. I think that's done a lot better. They're letting you be partners with who you want to work with. They should definitely open that portal up and learn how to do that with every other detail. All out will still be useless, but at least it will be more the morale. Let's start with the morale. I got to work in transit with my old partner that I started with. And a lot of times we had, I got to mention my favorite boss that I ever had, Sergeant Esposito in the 122 squad, always took care of us, but when it came to all out, waste of time. I don't know why they're doing it. It has to be making somebody money, because that's the only thing that I can think of.
Mike, at this point, I realize, I think that me and John are going to be honorary clinical psychologists. I think every retiree should come on this podcast. I think, John, I say it all the time that the podcast is therapy, but I think it's good for everybody to get this out and really get a chance to talk about the job with our friends and listeners that understand it, who most of them have been active, retired, whether NYPD, other law enforcement, or family of law enforcement members. So I think it's healthy. I think this is the right path to mental health. So listen, let's have a little fun. You're going on here almost 2 hours and 15 minutes. I love your stamina. Tell us about yourself. Like, what do you in life while on the job, in retirement? What do you do for fun? What are some of your passions? What music you like to do? Movies? Tell us about you off the job. Who's Mike Furia?
Very interesting. It's hard. You look at me. I used to do a lot of boxing, basketball player. I'm an athlete. And then you take into my knowledge in computers, and you're like, wait a second, Mike Tyson doesn't play with computers, right? It's a hard, and I think I always had that kind of misunderstanding as a cop. And I also love to write. I got all these pages right here of things that I wanted to say on the podcast. Maybe I hit about 10 of them, who knows, but that's why I'm writing a book. And it's just, this is a small tip of the iceberg of who Mike Furia really is. I'm a guy that was just born in Bensonhurst. I was raised under the right morale. Don't take shit from anybody. My father always told me, you get into a fight, you get out there the next day. You don't let nobody stop you. Whether you win or lose, you got to be a man. And that's what I try to teach my son. The world is changing. I wasn't the toughest guy in the world. I don't claim to be, but I will stand up to anybody that tries to bully me. And that's what I faced in the police department. I faced a lot of people that tried to bully me from day one. I don't know why, but I enjoy Photoshop. Love working, with facial identification. I made an interface that kind of makes things a little easier for facial recognition software companies to use. And it has link analysis. And I think ultimately it's going to be a beneficial thing in the maybe not. I don't know if law enforcement, I would never pitch it to the NYPD. I would never want them to have success with more of my credit, but they can't have my ideas. They didn't treat me right when I was there. So, I'm just a happy-going guy. Everyone sees me as an angry guy, and I was angry and I was disgruntled, but I had a right to be. The things that were done to me were terrible. That's about it. That's who I am.
So, Mike, we asked two questions to every retired member that comes on the podcast. Two questions are: one, if I take you back, you're a young kid again. At the time you came on the job, would you do it? Would you do it? and then I take you now, you're a young kid. Do you sign up? Do you do it all over again now?
Oh man, I love cops, but I couldn't do this job again. If it was 2005, I would have went back to school. I hated school, but I hate the way that I feel post retirement. That this job, I didn't reach my maximum potential because this job held me down. So I would not be a cop again. And I think about all the lives that I affected. At the very end of my career, there was a victim that I had as in a robbery case who was going when I was in the squad. And I'm so glad it was my squad work that got recognition. But he was in the academy and he wrote a paper work, a 49, about why he became a cop. And he actually mentioned that case where I helped him. And the NYPD did a whole thing on it in DCPI, some detective, obviously not the upper echelon, but this detective reached out to me and I got to meet this kid and he actually took my shield number and everything. So it was such a positive story that, I changed somebody's life. And I think about those lives and the people that I did reach and the people that I arrested. I identified 206 people that were involved in homicides, either the perpetrator or the witness. So I had a very successful career. So it's a shame for me to say that I would not do this job again. I lost too much of who I was. I find myself yearning to be Mike Furia from 2004. Even though I'm smarter now, this was not a good experience for me. And I would definitely not do this job if I was starting in 2025. Yeah.
Mike, getting to know you now doing this podcast, I have to say, I think that deep down, I think you're actually a really good guy. I think you got a huge heart. I can make my assessment here, and I think I'm a good judge of character, and I think that you misunderstood. And I think what I find is people like yourself, an alpha male that doesn't want to take any shit. I think that you believe in respect. You give other people respect, and you love people, and you're so passionate that when people disrespect you, you fire back. So I think that deep down, you're actually a really good guy, and I can tell. There's no doubt about it. I think you're actually a really good person. I think that you have the best intentions for the job, but you've seen the atrocities, and and I think there's many ways for you to help. I love the fact that you came on here. You're welcome to come on this podcast anytime. If you ever want to come on and do a roundtable, we'd love to have you. We'd have to monitor your F-bombs. I'm probably going to get a zapper. So every time you have an F-bomb, we're going to have to zap you because me and John, when we started doing the podcast, we had to all right, because I don't curse that. I curse here and there. I just don't happen to curse much. But John was firing away the F-bombs. I'm like, all right, we're going to have to monitor this. Well, you were going to need a zapper. So, but you're welcome here anytime. Honestly, I'm saying it from my heart. I think I'm make a good assessment of people. I think you're a great guy. I think you're a great guy. And because from what you're telling me, you take things head on. You're not talking about people behind their back. When you have an issue, you tell them to their face. I love people like that. Me and John say it all the time. We have behind closed doors. And, when we're talking about the podcast, we always, we go back and forth, agree and disagree. And that's the way it should be. That's what men should do. We need to, you're talking about masculinity. Let's bring masculinity back. Let's be men. There's nothing wrong with it. So I like you, brother. I think you're doing a hell of a job. Great interview. Like I said, almost 2 hours and 20 minutes into it. Any other thoughts? You want to tell us about the best case you ever had or something you want to tell us that you didn't get to mention? We'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I'll sum all that up. And thanks, Eric, man. You and John, you guys really got me through the end of my career. So, I'm honored for you to say such nice things about me. I am misunderstood. I myself know I sometimes do get a little off the deep end, but that's just the way I grew up. You're right. I don't take shit from anybody when I know I'm right. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I knew with my cases, I was right. I just wanted to do my job. And I had some great cases. I worked the largest jewelry heist in the history of New York. I identified 2 out of 3 criminals that had this was the Diamond District, $4 million. They one of the guys was actually wearing braids, and it was just a wig. It was bald. So when I had to find that guy, I had to find a mugshot. The guy was bald. So it was challenging. And this was a time before the technology was improved. And I'm looking through this case, and I found one guy at 3 a.m. I went home. The next day, I came back to work, and I found the second guy. So my cases never got touched back then. There was no need for them to get touched years later. And that's how I knew I was dealing with a swayed executive staff in my unit. But, that was just a case. It might be the highest profile case. Almost every case that you've seen in the media I worked on with the last 3-4 years. Shooting in the 4-4 with the kids on the sidewalk. You see them getting, dodging bullets. I worked on that case. A lot of these detectives got promoted for their part of the investigation, and not just me, but facial identification never got any credit for that, any of these cases. So, there was a lot of things that I did do, huge cases, but my favorite cases and my most talented cases, whether they were petty larcenies or robberies, whatever they were the mass removal cases and the cases that nobody else could do, So that's what I am most proud of. And I will gladly join you guys anytime.
Pat Donahue says, anybody lose notice that Macari and Furia are prone to F-bombs and profanity, and it appears they share the same barber.
Yeah, you could thank my old lieutenant Patrick Diskin for the braids that I have now. But absolutely, yeah. No, the funny thing about the F-bombs is my parents have never heard me curse. I promise you that. It's just when it comes to this job, I can't help it. It's just too much emotions involved. And
Mom and Dad are watching now. They're like, "What? What is going on?"
Oh yeah. That's it.
Yeah. So what else are you doing? I know you're working on a podcast. I know your book's coming out. Why don't you tell everybody where we could find you, where your podcast is,
So my podcast that I'm working on is called Vendetta Blue. Up until now, I've been telling a lot of my story, and I'm going to be answering all these questions when I go back and I look at all these comments, because I don't like to leave any stones unturned. But, it's just something I like to do. A lot of people thank me, and they reach out to me, and that feels good. And like I says, I'm in a chat with like 350 cops, and I don't know any of them for the most part, a few of them, and it's just branched out. And, I get messages all the time that I change people's lives. And it only takes one action to change somebody's life. And whether good or bad, I've changed a lot of lives. So, definitely like to talk about the job. And I want to see reform. I want to see the job be good again. Yes, Laura Cannizzaro is a tool. And to my haters out there, like you says, I did challenge a lot of these people. I say it how it is. And there's a lot of people that are probably watching right now. If you think that something that I am saying is wrong, or if you just don't like me, I'm not running away. I'm here. Like, we can talk, we can spar, we can box. There's smoker, whatever you'd like. You can come over to my house. I don't shy from anybody. I dealt with the toughest guys that I've ever seen in the streets of Bensonhurst. There's nothing in the NYPD that scares me. So,
Mike, why don't you plug your book a little bit? Tell us about where you're at with the book, what if you want to give the title to the book, and what the premise is, and where people can find it. And Tabitha Foster says, let him come back after the book is out. So you're welcome here anytime. Absolutely. Before the book, after the book. But let's hear about it, please.
Absolutely. The book is called Finest My Ass. It talks about my my views in the police department. Coming on the job as a 21-year-old kid, and just not. I respect the police department back then, but I wasn't impressed, man. Like I says, in the academy with the run dropouts and all that stuff, and you had military personnel dropping out. It's just all different. Like, how are certain cops doing this, and then they're getting recognition? Meanwhile, the cops that are actually in shape and doing the things and doing the job the right way, they're not. So I talk about a lot of my upbringing and why. I really go into what made me who I am today. The experience I had in Bensonhurst I hung out on a stoop like so many other people did in Bensonhurst. I hung out in the schoolyard. Next door to where I hung out was Colombo Soldier in the crime family. We had no idea. The guy was, as far as I knew, he's a nice guy. Used to see me playing basketball. He used to say, "Red, what's going on?" Right? Find out, I'm at his son's birthday party, first birthday party, whole block party. I never knew that this guy was, who he was. But these are the kind of people that lived in Bensonhurst back then. And turns out that he's doing 50 years right now for a 1997 murder of, was it Ralph Doles, officer. So this is the kind of people that I grew up with. And now I'm in this career with cowards, complete cowards. And I'm supposed to be intimidated? Absolutely not. So it's just ironic that I grew up around cop killers. And, then I worked with, I want to mention her name, great person, Francesca Massimillo, who her father was killed in the line of duty. And this girl, the amount of hatred that she gets from the job for being who she is ridiculous. She's a great person. She comes with, a total humbleness to her. And she was there for me a lot when I was in trouble during those 5 months. And this is somebody whose father paid the ultimate price. There's a park named after him, Dyker Park, over there. And I hung out there all the time. And, it's just funny where life takes you. And it took me from Bensonhurst to meet these great people. And I met a lot of great cops. My old partner says it all the time. This job did bring us family, and I have a lot of family in blue. So my career goes, from the point where I grow up to the squad to facial identification. A lot of things that I'm leaving out today will be in the book, and you'll get a further, in-depth view. It should be available on Amazon. I'm just fine-tuning it right now, for legal reasons. I got to leave some names out and certain things with books. It's a little tricky. I'm learning a little bit about it.
Do we get an excerpt in your book?
Absolutely.
So,
Will do.
yeah. So, I mean, I love it, dude. Finest my ass. I think it's, and shout out to the Massimillo family. It was a tragedy that happened, and all the line of duty families out there. It's, and even that, there's a lot of politics. I watch some line of duty families get treated differently than other line of duty families, and it's like I don't understand it. Like I just don't. But I guess that's the job, right? Nepotism, whatever the hot button flavors of the day.
Let me cut you, John. It's not that you could label somebody real easy, like, but you can't take away from what she lost and what she's been through. She decided to come on this job and represent her father ultimately. And so there's certain things that she may not have to do, where somebody else might have to. But you have to look yourself in the mirror and say, wait a second. I didn't do anything. I haven't been through anything close to what she's been through. And she knows a lot about, if Tish wants to speak to somebody about real time, she should speak to her, because she'll tell you, how it really is. And it's just a shame that, she had to go. I've seen her go through a lot of hatred, and it's unfortunate because I know what it's like to just come to work to do your job and have to deal with nonsense. But I can never, give her enough credit.
I like the second. Ron Layson says, this episode actually met my expectations. I agree. Ron Layson, we don't agree all the time, but I agree. Straight talker, truth teller, hands down. You interviewed really well. I think I think there's more to tell. For 2 hours and 30 minutes into it, you're showing hell of a stamina. We appreciate it. I love having you on here. Please keep plugging that book. I love the name. It's actually it's awesome. I'll never forget it. Definitely gonna read your book. There's no doubt about it. John, we'll close this out. We'll give you last words. Thank you so much, brother. Mike Furia, retired detective, NYPD, the real deal, facial recognition. Don't forget, he changed the game during COVID with the mask. Thank you, Mike. Thank you for contributions. We appreciate it. You're a good man. God bless you, brother.
Thank you, Eric.
Yeah. So just another note. I think the last episode we did on Kaz Daughtry. Kaz blocked you, or you've been blocked. So just a little update on that. A few hours after the episode, Kaz Daughtry changed that X account from his personal account back to an official New York City account. He actually made it the official account of the deputy mayor of public safety. Prior to doing that, he deleted everything, which is illegal. So we let him know that you can't do that on a public account. So then he restored it, made it the official account of the deputy mayor of public safety. And all the members of the Finest Unfiltered are blocked. So we're just marking that job a 1091. Shout out to everybody on here that liked, that shared, that subscribed, that got that message out there. You're the reason.
95. Refer to DOI.
You're the reason, yeah, because we were gonna do a 95 refer to DOI, and then we were gonna refer that to civil court after that. So so shout out to all you guys. And like I said, the elected officials, appointed officials need to be held accountable, and the way that we do that is through utilizing our First Amendment speech and our voices. Just like Mike's doing here today, and I think that's been the mission of New York's Finest Retired and Unfiltered podcast and the Finest Unfiltered totally as a platform, is to give a voice to the voiceless. So I hope that we've been doing that. Mike, got any last words before we get out of here, brother?
Yeah, I just hope Kaz can, maybe take a 2-minute presentation like he asked me to do, and maybe learn how to be an honest man, and a little. He's in a position to be a role model. Maybe he should take a presentation on that. And, just again, thank you guys for being on there. I hope everybody stays safe, keeps making money, as long as they keep some of that overtime around there. That's what it's all about at the end of the day. This job won't love you back. Somebody commented that, and that's all I keep thinking about. I wish everybody the best that is still working, that knows me, and thank you for your support. John, Eric, thank you so much. Eric, my prayers, your son and everything.
Well, I appreciate it.
My uncle's out there. He's battling stage 4 cancer as well. And, it's terrible times right now, but everybody's got to stay positive. We're all a family, and that's all we got is each other.
That's right. We're family. Absolutely. Thank you so much I really appreciate it. Bring awareness to cancer out there. Thank you so much for all the support from everyone. Mike, it's been a pleasure to have you here. I look forward to having you back. I even have Mike Smith text me, "Hey, can we do a roundtable one day with me and Mike? We'll have the 2 mics. That'll be a hell of a day." So
there we go. Mike's absolutely
the man. I don't know if me and John will get a word. We'll be laughing our asses off. But the Finest My Ass, you heard it here from Mike Furia, retired detective, NYPD. Outstanding interview. Like, share, and subscribe. You heard it here. Check out tonight the Executive Perspective. Mike, I hope you're watching that. If you get a chance, Executive Perspective, Ron Layson and Rob Lukash. Rob Lukash is getting better. He's feeling better. So we look forward to it tonight. A hell of an episode. If you had a chance to watch yesterday with Sal Greco, interview of Jim Walden, second appearance here in the Finest Unfiltered. Thank you, everyone. Take care. John, close us out, brother.
That's it, fellas. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. The great and powerful Mike Furia, the Finest My Ass, the author of the Finest My Ass, host of the Vendetta Blue podcast. So check that out, YouTube. We got his Instagram account down in the link. So that's it. We'll be back at you 8:05 on Friday with another roundtable. Check out tonight, 17:05 or 15:05 p.m. The Executive Perspective. Finest Unfiltered. We'll be back at you.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?
Law enforcement professionals dedicate their lives to serving and protecting our community. But who's protecting their financial futures? That's where Laidlaw Blue comes in. Our wealth management platform is specifically designed for the law enforcement community. Laidlaw Blue is a division within Laidlaw Wealth Management, run by retired New York City detective John McDermott. His status as a retired detective uniquely positions him to establish a deep connection between Laidlaw Blue and the law enforcement community. Our platform is easy to use and provides a range of financial services, including investment management, retirement planning, and insurance solutions. With Laidlaw Blue, you can secure your financial future and provide for your loved ones. Our team of experienced financial advisors understands the unique challenges and opportunities that law enforcement professionals face. We're here to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning and achieve your goals. Laidlaw Blue. Secure your financial future today. Book a meeting using the QR code displayed or call us directly on 888-901 Blue. That's 888-901 Blue.